The fact that you would say, well, I would support anything that clears a grand jury means you're a stooge or you're being disingenuous because you think that this is some, comeuppance against the Democrats. But it's not a real standard. Everyone can see through your little laughs and chuckles there that this isn't a standard that you actually uphold, is it?
You caught me. I'm being disingenuous. You're right. I didn't support the standard when it was against Trump.
So and you just admitted, right? You said, I have no evidence. All you're going off of is faith that somewhere, somehow. Yeah. Somewhere, somehow. You said you don't have any evidence, right? So what are we even here for? You're just going to defend the government even when I know nothing. That's your new standard. I defend the government. I defend their indictments even when I know nothing about it.
You've got enough information in there for a grand jury to indict Comey. You have enough public discourse, public testimony.
No, there's not. That was just a proposition. I don't know if you are paying attention to your concessions. You just conceded that there's not enough in the public record. You just said that. Do you remember saying that?
I do now. Sorry.
Okay, so
you're right.
I honestly do not care about the lawfare. I think that the left set the terms, and you guys have made your bed and you can sleep in it.
So to be clear, you're in favor of political prosecutions from Trump. I want to hear you say it.
Not necessarily.
You just said it. You said, I don't care about it, right? So you're indifferent?
No. I'm indifferent, yeah.
I mean, what's the point? You haven't read any of this shit. I mean, I'm sorry to be mean. You don't know shit about this indictment, dude. You don't know anything about it. Isn't this embarrassing?
Oh, yeah.
Palpy, you are last up. Close us out.
I'm retarded.
Hey, folks. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to check out my newsletter. Information is in the description.
Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And today, we are going to be talking about the Comey indictment. Recently, the DOJ, under the Trump administration, has indicted James Comey. Now, the questions that we will be exploring today are this. Is there any good evidence that James Comey is guilty of what he is charged of? And the second question, is the lawfare that Trump is engaged in a problem? And how big of a problem, if it is? With that, I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves, give their opening statements, and we got one more coming. We'll pull him in when he gets here. We're going to start with Audacity. Audacity, lead us off. Give us what you got.
Yeah, I'm Audacity. I don't particularly stream on these topics at any capacity other than being invited on WIC show. I have a technical background, information-minded and everything. I've done everything I can to get ready for this. I am of the opinion that there is sufficient evidence for the indictment, that there will be brought further evidence will be brought forward that will, lead to a solid prosecution of this, and that we'll end up at a result that hopefully is fair. And there won't be any foul play in here, but as everybody will suggest in this conversation, it is Trump, it is the Trump administration. So we have to be tentative of that. However, we have facts and details on this that is going to work out for us.
I guess we'll see as we go. Next up, Pisco, what you got?
Yeah, this indictment is a complete disgrace. You just heard from that opening statement, there was absolutely no explanation. It's completely bereft of the crime here, about what it is that happened, what it is that this indictment is about. It's because these people have no clue what the indictment is about, because there is no good evidence that James Comey lied to Congress in the way that is being suggested. There's not even an accusation from the principal theory makers, that is Andy McCabe and Dan Richman, that Comey lied at all about a disclosure. And we all know what this is about. This is about the Trump administration wielding its power and legitimately firing people because they wanted to go after his political enemies. That's what it's all been about. And this is what the MAGA people were screaming falsely about regarding Joe Biden back in his administration. And that's what we're seeing right now, directly in your face. And you're not seeing a single word from the MAGA loyalists about the weaponization of the Department of Justice, politicization of the Department of Justice, anything like that. I really am going to push these guys who are defending this indictment and the Trump administration about what evidence they have seen that would show that James Comey lied to Congress at all. And my prediction is they're going to be able to produce absolutely nothing. And you'll be left with the mere speculation that perhaps sometimes in the future there'll be some amount of evidence that we can sort of draw on to conclude that they're guilty. But Insider reporting suggests that Pam Bondi didn't want this charge to be brought, that the previous Trumpist U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia that they brought didn't want this charge to be brought. The special counsel, John Durham, investigated this matter. IG investigated this matter. It was concluded in the first Trump administration because there is no crime here, because this is all bullshit and they know it, and they're not going to be able to defend it.
Okay, well, we'll see if that remains to be true. Papa Palpatine, I think that's how you say your name. Is that correct?
Yeah. You can just call me Palpatine, or Palpy is my nickname.
Palpy.
But-
Okay, give us what you got, sir.
I think it's for I'm not here to like necessarily defend the indictment, because the fact is I don't know what's in the indictment, and neither does Pisco, neither does Dev. Nobody knows what's in it because it's incredibly vague, and this is how grand juries work. They don't have to lay out all their evidence. They don't have, and most of this is sealed, so we don't know what evidence the DOJ has to bring out here. So the claim that there's no good evidence that Comey broke the law, he doesn't know that. I don't know that. Nobody knows that. So it's kind of silly to make that claim with any certainty that there's no good evidence. You don't know. You just don't know. And as for that, like the whole lawfare thing, it becomes like lawfare was used against. Yeah, lawfare was used against not just Trump, but also everybody to like the right of Bernie Sanders for 4 years and even longer than that. And now that the right is in power, now that the right is, holding on to the steering wheel, suddenly we're expected to not play by the rules that was of the game that was used to play against us for the last 4 years. And it's a crock of shit. Yeah, there you go. I had a much longer opening statement, but no, I think I got it out.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Dev, welcome.
Hello, Wickers. How's it going? Thanks for having me on again. So I know, Pisco, that your background's legal, and I think, Audacity, you said that your background's more technical. I don't know what you said about yours, Palpatine. Mine is history and political theory, so I don't necessarily know that much about the law, but I do think I know what's going on here. See, here's how I understand the situation, okay? So in 2016, the Russian government started up what they called Project Lacta, which was basically a state-run troll farm that promoted Trump against Hillary Clinton in the run-up to the 2016 election. Russian intelligence hacked the DNC and started to release info that was damaging to the Clinton campaign. I was politically active during this time, and I recall that the mainstream focus was disproportionately on the Trump piss dossier, where Trump was reported to have pissed on a bed that Obama slept on at a Moscow hotel with some hookers or something. That was just complete fucking bullshit. But the actual story underneath was Project Lacta, which is basically just the online Russian propaganda. So as a result of this, in summer of 2016, we get the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, which was looking for links between the Trump campaign and Russia, whether Trump knew it was happening or not. And they did discover some stuff. For example, the 2016 era Twitter accounts, Tea Party News, LGBT United, United Muslims of America, Jen Abrams, Pamela Moore, and most notably 10 GOP, which claimed to be the Tennessee Republican Party. These were all later discovered to come from Russian IPs. But most importantly, though, an advisor to Trump's campaign, George Papadopoulos, made false statements to the FBI about his Russian contacts, who had handed him damaging info about Hillary Clinton. He pled guilty. He served 12 days in a federal prison before being granted a supervised release, and then Trump eventually pardoned him at the end of his first term. Trump himself was not actually suspected of any wrongdoing until he unceremoniously fired Comey as the FBI head in May of 2017. Multiple sources in the White House stated that Trump was pressuring Comey to drop the Russian interference investigation, and Comey just refused. After Comey's firing, Trump actually became a suspect, which led to the Mueller probe, which led to the uncovering of Paul Manafort's own ties to Russia, and then his conviction, and then he worked for Trump's campaign, and he also got a pardon at the same time. So now that Trump has a more cooperative DOJ in his second term, it looks like he's just starting to take revenge against anybody who opposed him during his first term, and that includes Comey. I've read a bunch of indictments over the years. From what I understand it, as for my layman understanding, an indictment is basically what the prosecution intends to prove in court. It's what they think they have pretty good evidence for. The indictments against Trump were huge. They had tons of claims, tons of preliminary evidence. They had some photos sometimes. This indictment is a page and a half long, and it points to 2 relatively inconsequential claims. Even if those claims end up being true, to me, this just stinks of weaponization of the legal process.
Okay, and with that, let's get into it. If you have trouble getting in or you feel you're being talked over, raise your hand, get my attention. I'll give you the floor. But with that, what do we think, gang?
Let's start with the indictment itself. Who is prepared to actually defend this indictment? Is anyone on this panel prepared to defend the indictment that was actually issued?
Absolutely.
Okay, so why is it, in fact, that you defend this indictment?
Because even though the indictment released what's been unsealed and reported to everyone, what's available for everyone to read, doesn't actually discuss what was presented in grand jury to allow it to go forward, to allow a grand jury to say, hey, this is enough information for us to say this is a court case. So it doesn't matter what's listed in the details. What matters what happened to that room we weren't invited in, we didn't have access to.
So your standard is
otherwise.
Your standard is you will support any indictment that clears a grand jury. Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, that's what's happened.
No, I'm asking you about I'm asking you about your standard, your normative outlook.
Sure, because that's been the standard for a very long time.
So just to be clear, you have supported every single case that was brought against Trump because it cleared the minimum threshold of the indictment by the grand jury. That's your position?
No, first, but I came around.
Okay, so your position, in fact, isn't that, is it? So now you're suggesting that you don't have a consistent standard, and that your standard now is so long as it clears a grand jury, you're not going to look at it a second time.
No, I will look at it a second time. I looked at it a third time too, and we're not owed the full explanation of what was done in that grand jury room.
So what did Comey do?
If this has been standard for the longest time,
it hasn't
then this is the standard.
No, it hasn't ever been the case that merely having an instrument pass through a grand jury and have that be, an actual indictment go through is sufficient evidence for one person to support an indictment. When has that ever been the standard, and why should that be the standard? Surely you don't support that standard, do you?
If that's what they felt necessary to.
Do you support that standard? Yes or no? The one that I just described. That is,
yes.
Okay. So you support any indictment, so long as it passes a grand jury, you're going to support that.
Yeah, it's how our legal system works.
Okay,
so sure.
No, that is a bizarre standard that no one should support. The story goes, right? A grand jury will indict a ham sandwich because the only people in the room with the grand jury are the prosecutors. It is trivially easy to get a majority of grand jurors typically to go forward with an indictment because the prosecution is the only one there presenting evidence. It doesn't need to be unanimous. And it's probable cause, a much lower standard than beyond a reasonable doubt. The fact that you would say, well, I would support anything that clears a grand jury means you're a stooge or you're being disingenuous because you think that this is some, comeuppance against the Democrats. But it's not a real standard. Everyone can see through your fucking little laughs and chuckles there that this isn't a standard that you actually uphold, is it?
You caught me. I'm being disingenuous. You're right. I didn't support the standard when it was against Trump because there was a lot of impropriety going on in those as well. You had massive adjustments to the ways court cases were being brought against Trump. You had changes in statutes of limitations. You had evidence being argued that it was improprietary to the defense's case because I can't remember the exact reason.
Yeah, you don't know shit. You don't know shit, dude.
The whole conversation of, we did business with Trump and everything was above board and it was fine. We don't really have any complaints to make. And they were still like,
you have no idea.
So
you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. You're talking about some misunderstandings of the statute of limited provisions at issue in the New York criminal case that has nothing to do with what I just asked you. What I just asked you had to do with whether you're normatively going to support indictment. And all you said was, so long as it passes a grand jury, I'm going to support it. No one was ever saying that should be sufficient for you to support indictment or not support an indictment. And you're conflating it with other hang-ups that you're having with procedures of other cases that have nothing to do with what you were just asked. And you admitted just then, yes, I'm being disingenuous. So I'm asking you not for your disingenuous standard, but for your genuine standard. When are you actually going to support an indictment? That's my question.
I support this indictment.
Why? What did Comey do wrong? What is your understanding of what Comey did wrong?
There's tons of reporting about him about him perjuring himself to Congress. There's tons of testimony, tons of argumentation to be made that he tangentially, in passing, passively, actively knew what was being leaked to the press. There's points in there that he had a third party that he would routinely go to proxy information out from his office to the press. So there's enough information here and everything that's been going on and all the congressional hearings and all the congressional arguments that we see constantly on Facebook fucking YouTube algorithms that there was an effort from him, from his office, from his leadership, and from his subordinates to put this information out to the press.
About what? What is the information about that supposedly he leaked?
You have the information.
What is it about? No, I'm asking you whether you have a minimal, a minimal understanding of what he's alleged. So, what are the matters that he's accused of lying, in which he accused of lying, I should say? What do they pertain to?
1 second. Oh. I'm really sorry. Whew. But the Clinton probe information and the Clinton Foundation investigation was a accused leak, and the information regarding the investigation into him during the Russian probe.
Okay, so now the question is, do you have any evidence whatsoever that James Comey leaked or authorized a leak about information related to the Clinton probe? Any evidence whatsoever?
Me personally, I don't, but we will find out in an investigation.
Well, no. The thing is, and this is to the other guy's point. I don't know, Palpatine or whatever his name is. We're not writing on a blank canvas here. Thankfully, we have an entire IG investigation about this matter that tells us the nature of the claims and what they can ultimately ground down to. And they can ultimately ground down into, and this is what the reporting is, because this U.S. Attorney's Office is leaking like a sieve. It either pertains to Andy McCabe. Andy McCabe never was authorized by James Comey to do a link to the Clinton Foundation to the Wall Street Journal, ever. He doesn't even accuse that. And the Inspector General under Trump, they found that in the same way, that Andy McCabe wasn't authorized by Comey, that Comey didn't know in advance about any leak. So that theory is completely garbage. There's no evidence that Andy McCabe leak to the Wall Street Journal originated in Comey. At most, he was told about it a day after the leak actually occurred, or a day after the story came out. And then second, there's this story about Dan Richman. But of course, Dan Richman was publicly quoted with respect to the Clinton matters. And of course, the statement that is being alleged that Comey had adopted has to do with anonymous leaks to the press. And so no matter which way you slice it, either the Dan Richman theory, and that's the person, you don't even know the fucking name because you haven't spent any time looking at this indictment whatsoever, or if you take the Andy McCabe version theory of the story, you're fucked, because neither of them accuse James Comey of authorizing a leak, an anonymous leak in that context. So you have, and you just admitted, right? You said, I have no evidence. All you're going off of is faith that somewhere, somehow, somewhere, somehow. You said you don't have any evidence, right? So what are we even here for? You have zero fucking evidence that he lied to Congress.
I'm not the prosecutor. I'm not on the grand jury. I wasn't in the room when it happened.
But you're willing to defend it, even though you admit you know nothing. Even you admit you have no evidence whatsoever. Even though there's public reporting that this Trumpist U.S. attorney was fired specifically because he said the case was bad and he wouldn't bring it, and that Pam Bondi didn't want to charge this case either. In that context, after there's been an IG report, after, by the way, the Trump administration under the first term charged McCabe for lying, so kind of implicitly contradicting their prior theory if they're going with the McCabe theory. In all that context, you say, I'm still willing to defend it even though I have no evidence. Isn't that dogma? Isn't that utter bootlicking shillism, that you're just trusting the government no matter what, and you're just going to defend the government even when I know nothing? That's your new standard. I defend the government, I defend their indictments even when I know nothing about it.
Hold on. The prompt doesn't require us to defend the indictment. The prompt is there is no good evidence.
Right. So do you understand?
You don't know what evidence was brought.
Do you know that you're? Do you know that?
Well, hold on, man. Because the name of the stream is Lawfare or Justice. It's not quite about the evidence, right? Like we're talking about whether or not this is.
Oh, just real quick. I did give 2 prompts. Pisco made those prompts. The prompts are as follows.
So the good evidence is relative to an epistemic context. Obviously, like, I can't prove to you that we're not brains in a vat right now, and there could be unexisting evidence that nobody is aware of, that no one has assessed at the moment. But given the evidence that is available, there is no good evidence whatsoever. And the fact that we are not, again, as I stress, writing on a blank slate here, where there have been previous investigations into these matters, including the previous Trump administration, where they have released reports on this matter, and including leaked documents from Kash Patel about Project Arctic Vortex and these other Entropic, whatever the fuck these stupid code names are. They've released those documents, and given what's been publicly available, there is no good evidence that Comey lied at all, and you haven't been able to point to anything.
That's not the, like, we don't have to. That's not the point of the prompt. The point of the, like, you're taking the affirmative position that there is zero good evidence.
Yes.
But that's an impossible standard to hold because you don't know what was brought in the grand jury hearing, and you don't know what evidence the DOJ currently is sitting on. We won't know any of this until it comes to trial.
So an exhaustive search of the public record after previous administrations have released reports related on these matters and leaked documents that okay, we can't hear because someone is fucking crackling. Okay.
Oh yeah, you're.
My bad.
Okay.
We good?
Will you at least agree with the following? On currently available evidence, there's no good evidence. Then we can get into whether or not we think there's good evidence behind the scenes. Will you agree with that? There's no good evidence now available that he lied.
I'm inclined to concede simply because I don't have in hand what was in that room and what they presented. So yeah, I will take to that point.
Yeah,
I suppose.
You're just trusting the government that they have good evidence. And like I said, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. It's just the prosecutors in the room. They can spin whatever tale they want. There's no judge there. There's no other side. So you shouldn't just trust the fact that the grand jury approved something. I'll have you know, they disapproved another theory of theirs, which is already a bad sign. Even unhinged MAGA legalists from like the National Review, this guy Andrew McCarthy, who's one of the most fierce critics of Russiagate, of James Comey's conduct. He hates James Comey. He thinks it's one of the greatest scandals ever. He says this case is a dud. It might not even reach trial. To the extent that it might reach trial, it might just be because James Comey presses it. But the truth is, there's no reason to think and to just trust this government that they're going to have the goods on Jim Comey. If for anything, there are just mistakes in the indictment as we speak. There's no utterance that Jim Comey gave that's included in this indictment. All they have is the statement by that was allegedly adopted by Jim Comey from initially Chuck Grassley and then asked again by Ted Cruz. That chronology is not presented in this indictment at all. And like I said, it's all based on a premise with no evidence, for which if they had evidence, and this is another, I think, a good reason to think that there isn't any, if they had good evidence, they would have released it publicly, because that's what this DOJ is doing. Anytime they're finding something that's potentially embarrassing for the previous administration, what do? They immediately go to Twitter. They have some preposterous, absurd interpretation. That's what Tulsi Gabbard did with all of the documents allegedly, that Obama cooked up a second intelligence report about whether the Russians interfered in the election for the benefit of Trump. The minute they had documents that were negative of the other side, they released them publicly. So given what we know about the pattern and practice of this administration, when they have compromising information of the previous information, it's just to fucking release it. And we have insider reports from Trumpist U.S. attorneys who are saying, we don't want to bring the case because the case fucking sucks. It sucks. And the only basis for you to support this indictment is to say, well, I believe and trust mommy and daddy government that somewhere, somehow, there's secret evidence that no one's ever seen before. And I'm telling you, the chances of that are so low, so astronomical, that you should just accept this first proposition.
I mean, I don't accept it because, again, you're speaking from a point of absolute certainty that you cannot be certain about either. You're sitting here with complete and total confidence in something you don't know. You don't know what was said in that room until a judge requires the unsealing of these grand jury hearings. We will never know what was said in that room that got the grand jury to sign off on this indictment.
I've got a question for you. Since we do actually have this sort of ambiguous middle room where we don't know this evidence that may or may not exist, how come you're defaulting to trusting them?
Why wouldn't
they?
That's been the standard for a very long time. Trust the government.
Trust the government has been the standard the whole time. Trust the government.
I have heard so many arguments previously that they are making good decisions and that you should trust their judgment and that there is no issue with the things they're pushing out. this is true of not only the American government, but Dev, when the trucker protests, everything was going on.
Oh my God!
What your government was doing, you were like, the government needs to be trusted on that.
The
government's making good decisions.
Okay.
This is insane. So anytime we have a discrete issue here, you're gonna ground down into your list of grievances that you have, not even with the American government, but now with the Canadian government. So you're saying that the reason that you're acting like
it's a grievance with character.
The reason that you're
for the
acting
longest time, told trust the government, that they're doing the right thing, that they're capable in their hands. And I understand you got a bias against the Trump administration. You are inclined not to trust them. As I said in the opening, yeah, we have to be a little wary of how they're going to proceed with these things. However, you've got enough information in there for a grand jury to indict Comey. You have enough public discourse, public testimony to support the cause and claims that
to crush the arguments. No, there's not. That was just the proposition. I don't know if you are paying attention to your concessions. You just conceded that there's not enough in the public record. You just said that. Do you remember saying that?
I do now. Sorry.
Okay, so
you're right.
You just flatly contradicted yourself. And number two, what I was saying is, isn't it the most childish thing to say, well, the reason I'm acting like a government bootlicking shill is because these Canadians acted like a government bootlicking shill, or fuck it, even these other Americans acted like government bootlicking shills. You're basically saying I can act like a fucking a lemming. I can act like a total classless oaf who just trusts the government because other people did.
Yeah,
did you trust the government every single time anyone ever brought an indictment against Trump?
No.
Did you ever question?
No, I took a look at those indictments carefully. We went through them. We read them. I didn't just blindly trust Jack Smith's indictment. And I had criticisms that it didn't go far enough.
No, but you came out the other side agreeing that he deserved to be indicted, that he probably deserves to be in prison,
Of course, because he's a fucking criminal. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't.
Right, exactly. So whenever we're doing the same... No, hold on. So when we're doing the same thing, when we're saying, okay, our guys who are currently in power are probably doing the right thing, it's bad when we do it. We're bootlicking shills, but it's okay when you do it.
No, I'm not a bootlicking shill because I actually parse through those...
You clearly are.
So just because I just because I support some charges and some prosecutions.
Did you support every single criminal charge brought against Donald Trump?
Absolutely, yeah. They're all based.
You are a bootlicking shill by your own standard.
No,
I didn't.
No, hang on. So my standard isn't, well, if you're against this prosecution, you're a bootlicking, or if you're in favor of this prosecution, you're necessarily a bootlicking shill. But at a bare minimum, if you're saying I'm in favor of this prosecution just because I trust MAGA, that makes you a bootlicking shill. I wasn't in favor of the prosecutions against Trump because I just trust the government like you guys are. It's because I read those indictments. I understand what the words there are, and I understand the nature of the evidence that they were bringing to bear. So that's why I support those indictments, is because they were based in fact and law. But you sit here and you say not only that you have no good evidence right now to suppose that Jim Comey lied, but the only potential to save this prosecution is secret evidence that you're not aware of. And ultimately that it just applying a standard. Undisclosed. Okay, what's another word for undisclosed?
Non-release.
Are you really gonna fucking call me on that shit? You're gonna call me on that?
Under seal. It's not under seal is not secret.
So the grand jury procedure, that mechanism where they're bringing in people potentially, they probably just brought in like one or two guys, like an FBI agent who's like familiar with the evidence or something. Like that transcript itself is under seal, but the nature of the evidence here is available. Again, I want to stress, we are not writing on a blank slate. The previous DOJ and the FBI inspection division, as well as the Office of the Inspector General, reviewed Comey's messages. They reviewed internal communications. They interviewed both Comey and McCabe and the relevant parties. They came to a non-charging decision as to Richmond, as to Jim Baker, the general counsel of the FBI at the time, as to James Comey, where they believed Jim Comey that he didn't authorize this at all. And to the extent that Richmond was giving any information to presses about Comey and how Comey was doing a good job or whatever, or giving Comey's side, he was not anonymous. And the statement from Grassley says anonymous sources. So given that we're not writing on a blank slate, there's plenty to go off of. And doesn't it concern you that the U.S. attorney that Trump installed in the Eastern District of Virginia said, I'm not fucking touching this. This is a Trump loyalist that said there's no case here. And Trump fired him and installed someone with zero prosecutorial experience, never charged the case at all, specifically because she was willing to bring these cases. that doesn't concern you about the nature of the evidence here, and also the fact that this was investigated by John Durham and by the previous OIG and FBI under Trump?
Palpatine, you want to take
Your
this?
your silence is fucking speaks volumes. You know this case is fucked, and the only way to justify it, the only way to justify it is by saying we're acting like you did.
Hold on for a second. Hold on for a second.
Well, no, like I said in my opening, I didn't come here to necessarily even defend the indictment because that wasn't the prompt I was given. I don't have to defend the indictment.
Okay, well, I'm
Like,
glad that you're not defending it.
Your insistence that there's because I don't know. It's a 2-page indictment. Okay, I read a lot of the Trump indictments too, when they were way longer. But
Yeah.
I'm also
What's your claim then? What is actually your claim then if you're not defending the indictment?
that you guys don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know what evidence was brought to bear. You cannot sit here with any degree of certainty and say you know for a fact there is no good evidence. You
Okay,
don't know what evidence the prosecution has to bring to bear. You don't know.
So
Okay, so just because hold on.
Let
Palpy go, then we're gonna go to Dev, and then we'll
Just because the Biden DOJ thought they had Trump by the balls and that they were willing to try to dab on him by dumping half of their evidence in their grand jury or in their indictments doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't mean that we have to follow that fuck. Give me a second.
You have no idea where the fuck you're going. So when I'm talking about is there no good evidence, that proposition is relative.
Calm the fuck down. Chill the fuck out, dude. Goddamn, why are you always so fucking like?
Just relax,
like you
because
can't hear guns blazing,
so it is
Jesus
because
Christ.
it's offensive. It actually is offensive that you guys would sit here.
Oh, am I offending you?
Yes,
You got
actually you
sand
are.
in your little
It's fucking
vagina?
offensive. It is
adorable.
It is fucking offensive to this rule of law,
my God.
and this is why I think it's so telling, right? Because you have nothing to say other than, well, you can't know with 100% certainty because epistemically, I guess you weren't in the grand jury room. But that I'm obviously, when they say like there's no good evidence for it, it's relative to an epistemic context. I'm not saying that I know for certain that there's objective truth or that we're not brains in a vat or that I know even my theory of knowledge is not like at issue here. We're just talking relative to the facts that are publicly available. And given the fact that we're not, I want to repeat this, and I want to make sure you hear me, that we are not writing on a blank slate, that there have been investigations of this matter before and pertinent leaks about what information is available. And the only theories and public reporting and leaks indicate that it's either Andy McCabe or Dan Richman that is this person 3 in the indictment, and that the leak pertains to Hillary Clinton, either Dan Richman or Andy McCabe. And under both of those theories, what we know is that Dan Richman was interviewed by the FBI, and he didn't say that Comey authorized him to say anything about Hillary Clinton to news reports at all. And to the extent that he did, it was public, and it was him being quoted as Dan Richman. So that's what we know from that. And from McCabe, that was heavily investigated, and there was an IG report about it. And so you're acting as though we have to just take this position of agnosticism when all we have to say is the best evidence available to the public suggests that there's no case here.
Okay, Palpy, you can finish up what you were trying to say, and then Dev wants to ask a question, so that's the order we're going to go.
Dev can go.
Okay, Dev, go ahead.
He's barely spoken. I've spoken more than he has.
Okay, sure. So, like, I listen. I understand I don't know if you guys are libertarians, but like the quasi-libertarian position you guys are taking up, right? You know, it is reasonable to distrust the government at least sometimes. You know, the government can be wrong. The government has been corrupt in the past. It's because not all governments are the same, right? Like, not all people who work for the government are the same person. Okay, like, so here, I will throw you guys a bone, all right? Because I know, based on what I've heard the two of you say so far, I'm going to guess that, like, back during COVID times, you had some criticisms of, for example, Fauci, right? He said some weird shit on TV, the double masking was kind of cringe, the claim that the vaccine was perfectly effective when no vaccine is actually ever perfectly effective. These are things that I'm guessing you guys would say probably lowered your trust in the government somewhat. Is that correct?
Sure, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so if that's the case, if you head over to the indictment that we're actually talking about, it is signed by Lindsay Halligan. Do you know who Lindsay Halligan is?
She is replacing Eric Siebert, who did not originally want to prosecute. Right.
So she was Trump's personal lawyer in 2022, and then she was in 2025. She was brought on to the Trump administration in some capacity that wasn't legal, and then she was put in to file this specific lawsuit because nobody else at the DOJ wanted to do it. So like if Fauci's weird comments on TV make you distrust the government somewhat, which maybe they should, does this not make you distrust the government a whole lot more?
I mean, it would if this wasn't. Fuck, dude. It would if this wasn't something that historically, if replacing prosecutors, if firing prosecutors, if prosecutors resigning and then being replaced like this, which this isn't a resignation, all right? It is a firing. I just want to make that clear before they get, jumped on again. Firing of prosecutors and replacing them with another prosecutor and then charges going forward is not unfounded. It's not unprecedented. It has happened before. It happened under Nixon. It happened under...
Do you understand what you're doing when you're citing Nixon? Do you understand what? So when you're citing Nixon,
with the Nixon,
you're citing the
yes.
You're citing the Saturday Night Massacre. Do you realize that?
Yes. But
I'm
not trying to say or support for that action. I am saying that it's not unfounded that a prosecutor get replaced.
And it's also not even on all fours because
it's not a good example. I have to find another one.
What Nixon was doing there was trying to protect himself from the from Special Counsel Cox at that time, the special prosecutor. This is offensive, right? So you can even say for Nixon, I think it was horrible. The Saturday Night Massacre is considered like one of our worst constitutional crises ever, and you just cited it as precedent that we should look to what Trump is doing. So I suppose if that's the precedent you want to cite, whatever.
I'm not citing that specific incident as precedent. I have to get to other elements if I could fucking remember them, but I can't.
Are you okay, man?
Well,
no,
like
but I'm still here, but yeah.
And in that context, he was stopping an investigation into himself, which is really, really, really bad, and something Trump is already doing, by the way, also during this administration and the previous one. But now he's going after his political rivals. So I would argue it's even worse what's going on right now. And even, by the way, the Nixon example is enough, and it proves my point, because that obviously was political and self-entrenching.
Yeah.
I want to make sure Dev got his point out though, and everything.
Yeah, my point here is that it just seems to be the case that your skepticism towards the state is biased and it's one-sided, right? Like you see weird shit happening during COVID. There was reasonable questions to ask about government actions during COVID. Fair enough. But it's now that Trump's in the driver's seat and he has his personal lawyer file this 2-page indictment with fucking nothing on it, you guys are like, okay, no problem.
Well, I mean, if we're, are we getting into the lawfare part of it? Because honestly, I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, you don't care.
Lawfare.
Move on to the lawfare part of it.
I honestly don't. I honestly do not care about the lawfare. I think that the left set the terms, and you guys have made your bed, and you can sleep in it.
So to be clear, you're in favor of political prosecutions from Trump. I want to hear you say it.
Not necessarily. It
You
depends.
just said it.
No, I didn't. Don't put words in my mouth.
You said I don't care about it, right? So you're indifferent.
No. I'm indifferent. Yeah, I'm indifferent. I do not look in an ideal world. In an ideal world, nobody would be participating in lawfare. The problem is we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a world where Trump was the victim of lawfare every day for 4 straight years, and not just Trump.
So
but people in Trump's orbit. I'm not done. People in Trump's orbit. People in Trump's orbit. Regular private citizens were the victims of Democrat lawfare for 4 years. You guys set the terms. You guys set the rules of engagement. Now that we're in power, our guy is doing it to you, and suddenly you expect us to start playing by rules that you guys didn't even play by. So no, I don't care.
So the debate,
if Trump is doing this to you,
the debate is essentially over.
I do not care.
So last thing to go through is I'm sure all the stuff about the Democrats, but you have just admitted, right? Because a principled person would say, you guys did it, but we're better than you, and we're going to hold ourselves to our own standard. That's what a principled person would do.
What good are principles if it's the
hang on. So wait. So let me get this out. So a principled person would say, hey, you Democrats, you engaged in lawfare. I'm going to contest every single one of your claims there, I'm sure, that we're going to go through, and we'll probably, because that'll be ultimately where the debate is, and say, we're going to hold ourselves to that standard of not supporting political prosecutions. What you just said, and I want you to make sure that everyone knows what you said, and make sure that you agree to this characterization of it. You just said that you are indifferent to the President of the United States that you support conducting political prosecutions. Didn't you just say that?
Yeah, I said I'm indifferent to it. I do not care that he's doing it.
Okay.
Like, do you want me to say it
you're
a third time?
admitting you're a hypocrite.
do
You're
not
admitting you're a
care.
hypocrite. So you're a hypocrite, aren't you?
What have I said that's hypocritical?
So because you said you were against that in the first when the Democrats controlled, and now you're in favor of that. So that makes you a hypocrite,
No,
doesn't
I
it?
said in an ideal world, nobody would be doing it. But the fact is, the terms were set.
Were you
and
against
that's
political? Were you against
on.
political prosecutions when Biden was in control?
Yes.
Oh, are you in favor of them now that Trump is in control?
No.
You just said you were, right?
No, I didn't say I was in favor of it. I said I'm indifferent to it. If
Oh.
Trump is going to, I said, yeah. This isn't a gotcha. This is literally the first thing I said.
So
in
I'll
my
just change
opening.
it. So were you indifferent to prosecutions when Biden was in office?
No, because that was the
Okay,
first time
are-
I'd seen the.
are you
that was the
indifferent?
first time I'd seen lawfare in my entire life. That's the first time I'd seen
So you
lawfare
were-
used so flagrantly.
So you were not indifferent before, and now you are indifferent. That's hypocrisy, isn't it?
That's not hypocrisy. That's
Why is
called
it?
being jaded.
Okay.
That's called okay. No. Let me analogize
Yeah.
it a little bit. Let's say that I'm getting into a physical fight with a guy, and I go into it with the intention of it being honorable combat, and I don't do any cheap tactics. I don't thumb him in the eyes. I don't kick him in the balls. Nothing like that. And then first thing he does is thumb me in the eye, and I still don't retaliate. Second thing he does is kick me in the balls. I still don't retaliate. Then he picks up a handful of dirt and throws it in my face. And then finally, I get fed up. I kick him in the balls. I thumb him in the eye. I throw dirt in his face. And then suddenly he throws his hands up and goes, "Whoa, bro, why are you cheating? I thought this was a fair fight." What good is the moral high ground if it's just used as the gallows by which you hang us?
Yeah, so sometimes there are some principles that I think, you have to have an even playing field or whatever. But there are two ways I can address this. Is one saying that the principle of having equality before the law and no political prosecutions is so important that even if it's asymmetric, and I believe it is asymmetric, I believe it's asymmetric that MAGA is political in their prosecutions and the Democrats are not at all. That's where I think the asymmetry is. I'm better than you, and we're better than you because we actually we held Joe Biden to a higher standard than what you're holding Trump to. And so, yes, even there are some principles that we hold ourselves to, even in the context of an asymmetry. But I can just deny that. I can just go in it and say the asymmetry is reversed. That under Joe Biden there were no political prosecutions of Trump or his allies, and under Trump there's massive amount of political prosecutions, which you even won't deny.
There's only one political prosecution so far, assuming that's even what it is, because there could be legitimate evidence that Comey broke the law. Is lying under oath against the law?
Yes, lying under the oath can be a crime. It's about a material.
Do you know
it's about a material fact.
Do you know for a fact that James Comey?
What do you mean by no?
Did not lie under oath.
What do you mean by no?
Do you know with certainty that James Comey broke the law?
To an epistemic certainty, given our current understanding of the facts and given what's publicly available, yes, we know that he didn't. I think that we're fairly certain to a degree of, I would say, 99.99% sure that he did not lie to Congress. And there's no reason to believe that there exists this extrinsic evidence. Now, I'm giving that 0.01% for the possibility that this miraculous extrinsic evidence that no one has reported on, even though there have been massive amounts of leaks regarding this specific investigation, and even though this investigation has had reports done about it and public reporting and leaks already, I'm leaving that 0.01% chance for there actually being some extrinsic evidence that we don't know about. But that's the amount that the certainty principle is. No one is 100% certain about anything. I'm not certain that we're not living in the matrix. I'm not certain, but to the extent that we can be certain about something, I think the evidence that we have and what is known about the pattern and practice of leaking in this administration and the previous reports, that James Comey did not lie, and there's no reason to think that he lied.
Okay, when they found, I assume you supported the Mar-a-Lago raid and the classified documents.
100%. Yes.
Okay, whenever they found classified documents in Biden's garage in in a box near his Corvette or in the trunk of his Corvette, I can't remember the exact detail.
Yeah.
But do you think that would you have supported Biden being brought up on the same charges that Trump was?
No.
For doing essentially the same thing?
It wasn't the same thing.
It was the exact same thing. Classified documents that he allegedly was not supposed to take after he left the office of the vice presidency, kept in an unsecure place in his private residence.
No, because
what's the difference? What's the material difference?
I can tell you the criminal standard of willfulness. Willfulness standard means under the national, so it's not classified document statutes. This is the Espionage Act, and it relates to national defense information. And the standard for retaining willfully means that you need to know that what you're doing is illegal in order to make out that case. And if you've read the Hur report, I'll ask you, have you read the Hur report, yes or no?
No.
Okay. So you don't have any basis to say they're on all fours, do you? Because you haven't read the thing that details the difference?
Well, no. No, I guess I haven't.
Yeah. So why don't you shut
No,
the
I
fuck
haven't
up
read
and
the-
move on to your
I
next
haven't
bullshit?
read the Her report.
Yeah, you should read the Her report, shouldn't you? If you're going to make the claim of the same thing, shouldn't you have to read the Her report?
Well, I mean, I suppose, but
I've
Yeah,
read it.
I suppose I would have to read the thing.
Dude, stop fucking yelling at me. Calm the fuck down. Go take a Midol. Chill out.
Because you guys are ridiculous. You are saying that there's an equality here between two cases. That is the Mar-a-Lago case.
Were classified documents found in his garage in his private residence? Yes or no?
Yes, they were. That doesn't make them the
Then
same.
it's-
That
then
doesn't
it's
make them the
materially
same.
the same thing.
Oh, okay. So anytime anything involving classified documents, they're materially
When
the
you
same.
guys do it, when Biden does it, it's okay. When Trump does it, it's bad. This is
what MAGA thinking does. This is what MAGA
there is
thinking
actually
does.
a difference.
I do want to get Dev in here. Dev, go ahead.
Yeah. Palpatine, there is actually a difference, right? Because Biden didn't know he had them in there. And in fact, if you look at the photos in the report that you haven't read, that's fine. But if you look at the photos, you can see that they're like buried under a bunch of other like documents. They're mixed in with non-classified things. They haven't been touched in years. It's very clear that Biden didn't know that they were there, and they've been shuffled around in multiple different House movings over the years. Like he didn't know. So you lack as you said, Pisco, you lack willfulness. But then you go over to Trump, the Trump Mar-a-Lago case. He's like texting his aide or whatever, saying, "Hey, buy a bigger lock for the room we have the classified documents in." Like he knew what he had. That's the difference between the two cases.
I want to say just one thing real quick, that there is some bad evidence for Biden in this case, and I would be more willing to have this engagement with you if you've actually read the Her report. That there is a recording of Joe Biden saying the classified stuff downstairs. This is in his Virginia home before he moved back to Delaware. It could be a reference to his diaries that he took where no doubt there was classified material on them, but he just thought that he had the right to have them on there. It's a little bit more nuanced about the willfulness standard there, in that for willfulness, you need to know what you're doing is illegal. And Biden had a non-trivial argument based on the Reagan diaries precedent that he thought what he was doing was, retaining them lawfully. So I'm not here to suggest that Biden had no knowledge about having any classified material in his house at all. I think that's too strong what Dev just said there. But I'm certainly not going to get into the weeds of the willfulness standard and how these cases are materially different for people who haven't even done the barest amount of research to even read the Her report where it would detail the differences. So I just want to say, like Dev, there's some true things about what he said there, but I think Biden is more culpable than what people suggest who are Democrats with respect to the Her report. I just think it doesn't reach that standard of willfulness. And ultimately, I think the cases are so different for other reasons as well that we could get into. But why even engage this? Why even bring this up if you haven't even done the bare amount to even read a summary of the kind of evidence or even read the executive summary of the Her report? That is what is so offensive, I think, to anyone who's trying to, you coming in and say it's the same thing because it involves classified materials. That's fucking stupid. Why would you even open yourself up to say that any case involving classified documents is materially the same as any other case? That was a stupid thing you said, right?
Well, no, it's not a stupid thing I said. And the reason why I brought it up was, first of all, I hadn't actually read about the case in a long time anyway. I brought it up as an example of the your guy Biden doing something that is at least materially the same as what Trump did, and you wouldn't support prosecution against him like you did against Trump.
Well,
that was my point.
That's the thing I'm asking you about. You just said that it involved classified materials, and therefore the cases are materially the same. That's not a standard that you think is tenable, right? And that you can't believe that.
Extrapolate on that.
Just a housekeeping thing. Audacity has to go take care of family stuff for 5 minutes, so he's not abandoning us. He just has apparently.
Oh no, come back.
Surely
I'm scared.
He'll step in, and I will pretend to be Audacity for
yeah. So
I'm scared.
Right.
I'm drowning here.
So surely the standard can't be just because a matter pertains to national defense information or classified information, therefore it's material the same to another criminal case, when there's way more involved in these statutes and whether they're violated than just the mere presence of classified documents. You know that. Why did you say that?
Okay, so what is material? Okay, fine. So if I didn't read the Her report, and I didn't, I mean, I could lie and say that I did, but then that would make me look worse. So fine, I didn't read it. But I'm pulling it up right now, but I don't have the time to actually.
Yeah, don't bother. I can tell you. You can just ask me questions.
I'm saying just okay. So walk me through it. What is the material differences between the two cases?
So the big material differences, I would say, is and the most important, is the willfulness standard. Willfulness here meaning not just knowingly retaining documents, but knowing that what you're doing is illegal, right? So,
Trump didn't know what he was doing was illegal. According to Trump, let me make the case.
Right.
Well,
So,
I'm just addressing the one thing he said. According to Trump, and then I'm going to let you go. He believed he was within his right to take those documents and to declassify them at will.
so
And he also kept them in a room that he had locked.
Dude.
And in fact, what was it, the FBI or I can't remember if it was FBI or CIA. Pretty sure it was the FBI though. The FBI
Why
came
are
in
you
and
trying to
checked the
teach
lock
me
on the
stuff?
room.
I know what Trump's argument.
I'm telling you what I'm trying to tell you what I know. And
You're just blurting out. I know Trump's arguments. I know.
I'm gonna open up the floor. I'm trying to tell you what I know, and then I'm going to open up the floor for you to correct me.
Yeah.
Chill the fuck out.
So Trump, I think, had a non-trivial argument that he could have raised to say, "Oh, I thought what I was doing was authorized and legal to do. I was the president. I can do whatever I want when I get them." The reason why the case is so much stronger against Trump is because after he was subpoenaed by the DOJ and he knew, right, that he had no authorization at that point, right? He could have contested the subpoena from the FBI and said, actually, I have a legal entitlement to these documents. He didn't contest the subpoena. What he did was he gave a subset of documents over and moved some classified documents, which at that point he knew he had no authorization to have. Why? He had been subpoenaed for them. He gave over a tranche of documents. He authorized a document saying, I have no others. And then he said, I'm not supposed to show you these. I'm not supposed to have this, when he was caught on tape saying that. So that is all incredibly strong evidence that Trump, after he was subpoenaed, knew that he was not authorized to retain those documents. And that evidence just simply doesn't exist to the same strength for Joe Biden. So that willfulness argument, when he starts moving around boxes to hide them from the FBI, to hide them from the DOJ, when he starts talking to his lawyer saying, why don't we just not tell them about these documents? That is showing a willful mindset, not just knowing, right? Willful as in knowing what you are doing is not authorized. That's what willful means. And the evidence of obstruction actually, and that's where it's beyond a doubt. I mean, Trump is obstructing the search warrants, the subpoena, obstructing the investigation, no doubt. At that point, the evidence for both obstruction and willfulness starts to merge, and his evidence of a guilty mind is also the evidence of obstruction there. So that's what makes the cases so different. And that her report spells out a paragraph or two about the differences in those cases. Even though you can say all you want about the search warrant and should we ever go after a former president, maybe you can take that invitation to absurdity that former presidents have, not just freedom from certain criminal indictments, but freedom from search warrants for nuclear secrets. That's crazy. So those are the differences in why the case against Trump was so much stronger. In addition to the amount of evidence and the amount of top secret documents, there just is much more for Trump, and that is stronger for a willfulness case as well.
I do want to take a moment to read some of my super chats. Since we're near the top of the hour, we'll give everyone a reset now that Audacity's back. Hopefully he's good. Everything's settled, and at least for now. It'll be a good reset, and then we can get into the lawfare portion more succinctly. $5 from Alexander Rin to say, so was the indictment of Trump valid as well? Also, what is the standard of evidence for grand jury indictment again? Do you know the standard of evidence?
It's probable cause. And that's much lower than beyond a reasonable doubt. And so that's why they say, a grand jury will indict a ham sandwich, is because, one, the standard of evidence is much lower. It's not nothing, but it's probable cause. And it doesn't require unanimity of the grand jury either. It can be like a split of the grand jury.
Okay. $10 from Alexander Rin to say, isn't your own bias entirely one-sided? If so, then by your own logic, nobody should trust anything you say about it? Question mark?
Yeah, once you start admitting, thank you so much. Once you start admitting that you are, even though you have a way to say that you're not a hypocrite, or you do this little thing about playing in the sandpit or whatever, and the fight, if you start saying basically that I'm not going to hold myself to some ethical standard that is really important, I think it's really important. The reason I know all the weeds about these accusations against the Democrats is because I do think weaponization of the DOJ, politicization of the DOJ is very important. But once you start saying, like, I'm okay when my guys do it on the principle as important as independence of the judiciary, why should we trust you on anything? When you do as Rob Noor does recently, because he gets into these cases, but now doesn't want to talk about them anymore. He says, I'm a hypocrite, and I like that I'm a hypocrite, and I only apologize because I'm not more of a hypocrite. Then why should we trust you for anything? So yeah, I think it does start to bring into question anything you say about any of these cases if you're admitting that I'm just going to trust the government when it's my guys no matter what.
Any other responses? Otherwise, we're going to keep going. No? Cool. $20 from Chuckles Desu to say, yes, Because Pisco, political prosecutions require that both sides accept a prosecution isn't political if only one side says it can't, or says it isn't. Sorry. Then it's political. Are you saying the Dems did political prosecutions, Pisco?
No, I don't think that whether something is a political prosecution turns on the perceptions of everybody. Whether something is a political prosecution, I take that to mean whether a prosecution is motivated primarily by politics. And that I don't take to be a subjective standard in the sense of everyone from both sides agreeing that it'd be good. If that were enough, then I guess every prosecution of anyone political is in essence going to be a political prosecution because there will be people who disagree from both sides. So that's an absurd standard. The standard is what is motivating the actual prosecution. And I don't even think here our opponents would deny that what's primarily motivating Trump is revenge of his political enemies. I mean, you guys would agree with that, right?
Yeah. Sorry. I have to get back into the mindset. I'm really sorry for the beginning of this because,
it's okay.
When you have
if you
either way,
you got issues, man.
Absolutely, it is vengeance. It is vengeance. It's not supported. It's not only operated from Trump's side. You have members of Congress, whether you agree with their positions or not, that have brought up this issue over and over again by Comey. This isn't just Trump acting on his own. There's a lot of Trump element to it, but there is a lot of other element of support from the GOP on these actions taking place. So I can't just say that the only element is vengeance when there seems to be other parties involved in this political structure that have an issue with Comey's statements, with his original testimony, and then eventual conflicting statements and media interviews and so on and so forth.
Here are the problems. I don't see any conflicting statements of Comey. I truly don't. And maybe you can point me to them. But the problem is most of what people are pointing to with Comey about why they hate Comey has to do with Russiagate. And this indictment is not about Russiagate. This indictment is not about the Russian investigation. This investigation is about leaks related to Hillary Clinton. So it kind of reminds me of the on-paper reason. I think Dev went into some of the chronology about Comey and his relevance to the Russian investigation before. When Comey was fired, the official reason given was, well, it's because Hillary Clinton was treated so poorly because Comey broke procedure, which he did, to announce investigations and to basically comment and riff on the nature of the accusations against Hillary Clinton and what she did, and then to re-announce an investigation in October, the famous October surprise. Trump loved that shit, but then he cited that as the reason for why he was being fired, or at least pushed Rod Rosenstein to say that was the official reason why Comey was being fired. No one actually cares about, even if it were the case, as Dev mentioned, even if it were the case that he lied about this, and again, I think there's no good evidence, they don't care about this lie related to the Clinton Foundation, right? They're in favor of this prosecution because they just don't like Comey, right? They're trying to find anything that would stick to him. And so they support it based on things that have nothing to do with what Comey did. And the further evidence of that is Trump's tweets himself. What does Trump tweet when he says this prosecution is a good one? He says, they indicted me and they impeached me. Putting aside the fact that Comey wasn't in government when he was indicted, he was fired in 2017. Putting aside that the Russia investigation never charged Trump, that was on stuff related to the election interference case and the classified documents and the New York case, nothing to do with the Russian investigation. Putting aside that Comey was not a member of Congress who impeached him, Trump is linking in his mind the prosecution of Comey to these other matters. And he's saying that's why we're going after Comey. So the pure proof, based on the overwhelming sentiment against Comey, is that those sentiments and Trump's specific subjective mindset doesn't have to do with the nature of the charge against him, but about other political grievances, oftentimes that have nothing to do with Comey. That's why it's a political prosecution.
Okay. $10 from Lawson Harrison to say, in case it's not obvious, the reason Pisco is unhinged is because the Democratic Republic sky is falling, and there are many people that seem to insist everything is fine without bothering to look up. Thank you for the $10. $10 from the pleb. Palpatine. Your logic means if Dems get back into power, they get to go after the right because the right attacked them? Is it absurd to hold all politicians to a standard to not abuse power against opponents? This to you, Palp.
No, it's not absurd. And there was, for my entire life until 2021, that was the standard. We weren't attacking our political opponents in this way. Lawfare was not the standard practice. And then under the Biden administration, it did become the standard practice. It was done for 4 straight years. And if, let's say, by some miracle, the Democrats manage to, the Newsom AOC ticket manages to defeat, JD Vance, then they were, even whether I feel one way or no, if I feel some type of way about it or not, they were going to do it anyway.
No, but
So
will you condemn it?
Huh?
If Newsom does it, you'll condemn it, won't you?
No, probably not, because I'm consistent enough to admit that at this point I don't care. Like, I will.
So hold on a second, man. Like, why do you think that there was lawfare in 2021?
Well, because I think a lot of the prosecution that was brought against Trump was purely meant to derail his campaign and stop him from getting reelected.
That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, how?
Hey, hold on, in 2021? Oh, for the 2024 campaign. Okay.
You're talking about the Smith indictment? You're talking about the Smith indictments?
I think all of them, every single one. Florida, Georgia, New York. I think all of it. I think Letitia James and Alvin Bragg in New York. I think Fannie Willis in Georgia. I think the Biden FBI, the federal charges down in Florida with the documents in Mar-a-Lago. I think it was all transparently meant to just derail him, try to put him in prison to sweep him off the board so he couldn't win again in 2024.
What's your evidence of that?
So that was, I wanted to jump. I kind of expected that question, Pisco, and I want to build off of that. It is operated under a general public consideration that this was a concerted, orchestrated effort to try and keep Trump off of the ballot. There is no evidence that it was a top-down structure like what we're seeing right now for the political prosecution. However, a common mindset existed amongst prosecutors to bring charges up against Trump to try and stymie his reelection.
No, I'm asking, what is the evidence of that? What is your evidence that they brought the charges to stymie his election?
Alvin Bragg in New York literally ran his campaign on "I'm gonna get Trump."
No, that's not true.
We had adjustments to statutes of limitations on what could be prosecuted.
He used novel legal theory in order to bring misdemeanors up to felony levels.
No. So first of all, he didn't adjust the statute of limitations on these crimes because they're statutes. And guess what? The Manhattan District Attorney can't adjust statutes. He charged the felony version of the business records crime. And I have to ask you guys, and I don't know if did you read any of the trial transcripts or follow the trial at all, the New York case?
Only when they came out back then. I didn't keep track of it.
So I think that it's a little much to sit here and stomach you guys making characterizations of the Alvin Bragg case.
Did Alvin Bragg run his DA campaign on "I'm going to get Trump"? Yes or no?
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. Okay.
No, prove
You're
it.
just lying at this point.
No, I know what statements you're referring to, and I know you probably watched Actual Justice. Do you know? I'm asking you. Do you know? I know. Do you know?
Well, you're the one claiming I'm wrong, so prove me wrong.
Do you know or not?
Prove me wrong.
No, I know what his statement is. Do you know what his statement is or not?
Prove me wrong. I already said it.
So is the answer you don't know?
I didn't answer that question. I'm not engaged with that question.
So you're not gonna. So you just made a claim. You made the claim.
I don't know. Can you please tell me what the statement was?
No. But I just want to know. Do you guys know what the statement is?
No, I don't. I actually.
Okay. So
if you know something other than that.
So this is what I'm trying to get at is it's a little annoying to have you guys haven't read the substantive reports / charges / proceedings of these relevant trials. Haven't read the Her report. You don't know what Bragg said. And you're asserting that he ran on going after Trump when he didn't.
In fact, it wasn't exactly Bragg who said it. It was somebody else. It was it wasn't a mayoral candidate. It was somebody running for a different office where that would have been the case. They would have been able to bring up charges. They would have been able to go after Trump or go after Trump organizations or so on and so forth. But
I can tell you what Bragg. I can tell you.
Please do.
Yeah. So,
man, I'm a little distracted right now.
The thing is that you shouldn't have to rely on me to provide your evidence. And I'm gonna and it's annoying that I have to do this. But so Bragg said, and which was misconstrued by everybody, is I have experience tackling complex cases. I've gone after Trump before and we've been successful on this, that, and that. That's my history and track record of being able to run successful prosecutions. And he included the Trump cases among other cases that he had marshaled as evidence of his, good ability to handle these complex cases. He didn't say, I'm running for DA to go after Trump. And that's no one can point to a statement where he says the purpose of my campaign is to go after Trump. What he did is, in his campaign, he's citing his previous experience, which includes lawsuits, civil lawsuits against Donald Trump before, but not criminal ones. And he didn't give a forward promise, hey, I'm going to go after Trump. In fact, Bragg was kind of poo-poo on one of the main theories of against Trump, and there was actually friction within the New York prosecutors because he wasn't going after Trump enough, where they thought it was a very clear case. And so it's just not the case that Bragg ever promised that he was going to indict Trump. That never happened, and they misconstrued an innocuous anodyne statement where he's just listing off experience.
Okay. $20 from Alexander Rin to say, if we found a body in both Biden's garage and Trump's hotel room, one claims not to know anything about it, and the other showed it off to people. Would you be mad if only one was charged for murder due to the evidence available? I'm assuming this is to Palpatine to Audacity.
Well, no, if a body was found in Biden's garage and then a body was found in a locked room in Mar-a-Lago, I would probably think they both need to be charged with murder.
The point of this question...
Assuming that the evidence suggested that the person was murdered by them. Yeah.
That's the important part there, Palpy. The important part is, what does the evidence suggest? Murder is causing the death of another person with malice aforethought. That's what murder is. And if
can I clear some air with you real quick? I really came in here with absolutely no intention to be combative, and you're really abrasive, man. Like,
hey, I'm sorry about that. Hey, listen. The reason I'm so excited and why it sounds unhinged to other people is I'm just gonna level with you guys. This shit matters so much to me. Like, this is our country, right? And it's not good to have political prosecutions. And I think that some people live in these media ecosystems where you've heard that these are political prosecutions against Trump. You've heard that Bragg was running his campaign to go after Trump, but it ain't that way. And when you have the president of the United States directing his DOJ to go after political enemies on what you guys acknowledge is, even if it's not the main reason, which it obviously is, but even if it's one of the significant reasons, revenge, political revenge, and you guys are saying you're indifferent to it, you're fellow Americans. We need to care about this shit. Even if it's your side, you need to call it out. And I'm passionate about this stuff because I don't want to live in fucking Hungary or China. I want to live in America. And what Trump is doing to the DOJ is so fucked up. Well, Hungary has, is slipping towards authoritarianism.
Orban, yeah.
Yeah, under Orban.
But I wouldn't even say that I don't care, right? Because you were right to point out that I more than likely gave a shit about this stuff when it was happening to Trump. I more than likely gave a shit about these things when they were trying to bring up challenges against Obama and Obama's organizations, Obama's foundations. I more than likely gave a shit about this consistently across the line. So what changed? Why do I still consider that I care, but I'm indifferent to this situation? And it has a lot to do with, I can't say that I'm shocked. I can't say that I'm shocked it went here. I can't say that I'm shocked it's going in this direction. And quite honestly, it just feels kind of useless to do anything and to speak about principles and everything right now. We really feel like we're at a point where having principles is a luxury. It would be nice to be able to consistently stand up and say, hey, this is wrong whenever you see it happening. But to go back to the point, we're watching a guy get the shit beat out of him for 10 years, and then he finally stands up and starts throwing punches back, and we're supposed to be like, oh my God, this is insane. I get it. It's the country.
It reminds me a little bit of, I can understand sometimes it can get bleak if you think it's bleak for the right, it's bleak for the left sometimes, man. I know Wick feels this stuff because Wick has taken the sometimes controversial position of condemning violence, even when it comes from left-wing people.
Crazy, I know. A weird.
I also
stole that opinion from me.
Apparently.
But there's a lot of feeling. I'm not going to say. Listen, I think that we're not here to have that discussion, and there are aspects of what Wick says. But in general, I think it's a good principled position to be against political violence, even if it comes from your own side. But I can understand that this feeling has been expressed to me from a lot of people on the left and liberals who feel despondent. What does it matter if we vote? They're just going to fuck up the next election. It reminds me a little bit like the loyalist talk in the founding of the country. There are some people who are like, who matters? It's the king. Nothing's going to ever change. But I want to implore you, it's the most important to uphold your principles when A, you're in power, or when B, other people who you potentially don't like are trying to make common cause with you on those principles. The best example of this, I think, is the First Amendment. Fuck Jimmy Kimmel. He's not that funny. Fuck Hassan Piker. He supports terrorists or something. But it's most important to promote our principles when it's the vulnerable, it's the strong going after the weak, because once they make that excuse for that group, which is unpopular or which is disaffected or where it doesn't affect you directly, eventually it's going to come for you too. And so I would urge you not to be despondent. You're in power right now, and you have an obligation to hold your side to their principles. The same way, by the way, that there were a lot of critiques of Biden by left-wing and liberal people. He was eviscerated, especially after his cognitive deficiencies came into full focus. And the last hanger-on to bring it full circle was pretty much WIC TV.
I still think we would have won if he... But that's a different debate. We can have that another time. $10 for Gelatinous Rube to say there's zero need for debate, quote unquote, when, quote, you're not allowed to have an opinion on this because you're not a legal scholar, end quote.
That's just stupid.
Turns out to be
this is stupid.
That's not what's happening.
As described.
No, I hate when people are like, you know, you don't have the right credentials. Did you go to school? I don't try to bring up the fact that I'm a lawyer in these discussions. Everyone has a right to an opinion on these cases. And sometimes I have to say lawyers say dumb shit. And people like, there are some times where I like Eli Honig, but oftentimes he sounds dumber than some non-lawyers on these cases. So I don't think just because you have a law degree doesn't mean that you're any, smarter on a particular thing.
Right.
Okay.
So Palpatine, just real quick here, man. When I asked you earlier, if you thought that Trump was the victim of lawfare, you brought up the New York case. Do you believe that the other three big ones, the Mar-a-Lago case, the Georgia phone call case, the DC election obstruction case, that they're also lawfare as well?
Yes.
Why?
Well, in the Mar-a-Lago case, I don't think that. Granted, I don't know like exactly what documents he had, and I'm sure that's going to be a giant point against me. Specifically in the terms of like, I don't know what was on them. I know they were classified. I know some of them had to do with intelligence, stuff like that. And that there's the audio clip of him waving a piece of paper around and saying, "I'm not supposed to have this." Now, in that audio clip, it's not like he's holding it up for a person to read and showing them exactly what's on it. You hear him wave the paper around saying, "I'm not supposed to have this." Everybody has a chuckle, and then they move on. But I don't think it was malicious. I don't think he was like secretly keeping, piles and piles of state secrets that he intended to use or weaponize later on. I think he just said, he thought to himself, "I'm the president, or I'm about to leave the White House, but I'm the president. I'm allowed to keep these things anyway. I can declassify them later, or I can, later on if I want to." I don't think there was malice. Like, I don't think there was any intended weaponization. What about after the subpoena, though?
What about after this? So, okay, you can make that argument, and I'm actually sympathetic to that argument subjectively for Trump, because he thinks that he can do whatever he wants, and one of the standards here is willfulness. But what about after he's subpoenaed? Like, after he's subpoenaed, he has no excuse, right? The DOJ went to the effort to subpoena him. He could have challenged that subpoena and said, "No, I have the right to these documents." He didn't do so. So how can this extend?
He turned over a bunch of them, and then the FBI and the DOJ said that he didn't turn over the ones they actually wanted, and then they raided his house, right?
No,
that's like the chain of events.
So there was a subpoena for all marked classified documents, all of these documents, and he gave only a subset of them. Isn't that a malicious mindset? I mean, that you don't, that the fact that you're giving them over, as opposed to challenging.
When did we determine that there was only a subset? Sorry to cut you off. When did we determine that it was only a subset? Was after the raid happened and they found more documents, or they actually had on file listings of what he was holding?
So it was after Trump had signed on to a document or authorized the signature of his lawyer that he had given over everything, after agents visited Mar-a-Lago and took a bunch of boxes of documents from that room. After that, they had information that there was more documents there. Either it was a CI or something like that, but they got information that
they saw like cover sheets and they were like,
"Yeah,
oh boy."
And maybe it was the fact that they like were able to know which documents were missing, and in conjunction with the NARA or something. But whatever.
Yeah, typically under release, when you're dealing with original classification authority, when you're dealing with subsequent classification authority like that, anybody that essentially, I mean, I believe still to the standard today that the president is still the only person by word of mouth only and without witness can declassify a document. However, it requires that they actually be sitting in the chair first, so you can't be caught with classified information afterwards. But I declassified it. It's like, that doesn't work that way. But every other record, whenever something is released classification has changed or change of custody has changed, there's a record of what it was, where it went, and who it went to, and for what purpose. So
I'm
if
willing
there's
to
something
grant,
like that, I'm willing to believe there was something
listen,
like that.
I'm willing to grant that the president, when they're in office, has the ultimate control over classification stuff. The classification rules are promulgated by presidential directive, an executive order. And the most recent one, I think, is from Obama. That's the one that is like the current classification system. But after you're no longer the president, and after there has been there's no evidence that he declassified. And if you're willing to say, well, the very act of moving those documents implicitly declassifies them, that would seem to suggest that the president isn't able to travel with those documents without mentally declassifying them implicitly. So it seems to be a limit on the president's authority to accept this implied declassification theory. But even put that all aside, right? He could have contested that with the subpoena. Like with the subpoena, he could have contested and said, hey, I have a legal entitlement to these documents. They're not government. And put it aside, by the way, they don't belong to him. Even if they weren't classified, these aren't personal documents of his. These are documents that belong to the United States government and to the people of the United States, right? They're not his documents. They don't belong to him. They belong to our posterity. They belong to the government. After he's subpoenaed, there can be no basis to suggest that he has this innocent mindset. And you guys aren't seriously going to argue this. Come on.
No, but he's not the only president who left office and kept classified material. Clinton did it. Obama did it. Biden did it. We know for a fact Biden did it.
You keep going back to this, which is, yes, there have been, and not just them, right? Mike Pence. We have other insiders, in addition, like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Trump as well. But yes, I would absolutely accept that all of these people had their own issues with classified documents. That doesn't make the cases the same. And I thought you acknowledged that before. That there's a whole thing called the elements of a crime. And whether there's sufficient evidence for a crime relates not only to whether you find classified documents there, but to other things as well. And so when you keep going back to, well, Biden had documents, well, Pence had documents, well, Clinton had documents, you're just not addressing the other needed elements of the case, which for former presidents and former vice presidents, you pretty much have to rely on willfulness. And there just isn't great evidence, I think, there's a lot of strong evidence that Trump was willful, especially after the subpoena, that he knew he wasn't authorized to have those documents. Otherwise, why wouldn't he have contested the subpoena? Otherwise, why would he give over any documents, right? Even giving over any document seems to be submitting to an authority.
No, I'll finish up and then
Hey, I want to give you something
to reset. Go ahead.
I don't think he knew he could challenge that shit.
I
don't think his lawyers knew he couldn't challenge that shit.
No,
either,
they did. Of course they did. No, he's challenged subpoenas.
So?
He's challenged subpoenas before. Come on, guys. He challenged the Cyrus Vance Jr. subpoena. He challenged the congressional subpoena into his taxes. It is absurd.
I think it might have been the one genuine moment he was like, oh,
why
shit,
are you
caught.
doing this? You have no basis to believe that Trump subjectively thought he was prevented from challenging the subpoena. Guys, he challenged the search warrant. That's what the Dev brought this up before, that Lindsay Halligan, what's her previous involvement with Trump? She sued to involve herself and interfere in the execution of a search warrant, and Eileen Cannon, to her disgrace, provided subject matter jurisdiction until she was slapped down by the 11th Circuit. And so you just had no basis to suggest that Trump thought he was unable to challenge the sufficiency of the subpoena, and it's absurd. You just made that up, and it flies in the face of... Yes, but why did you say that? Why did you say that?
Because, hey, it's fucking ridiculous, right? And he's a ridiculous guy, so I wouldn't doubt it, right?
You were trying to find some way to exonerate him, but the weight of the evidence here...
No, I'm not trying to exonerate him.
Why would you say it?
I was just agreeing with you and trying to work out considerations.
You were not agreeing with me. You were
being amicable.
No, what you were trying...
I was trying to be amicable in my conversation with you, man, and I was just bullshitting a little bit. You're flying off.
But no, because what you just said there, right, was essentially, I don't know if Trump would think to even contest the subpoena. Does he even know he can do that? That is an out for Trump that you're trying to give him. You're trying to say, like, well, he didn't really know he was allowed to do that, so of course he's going to hand over the documents because he didn't think he could challenge the subpoena. But even if that were true, and let's say he even granted you that, because that is a defense of Trump, why would he give over only some of the documents and not all of them? If he thought that he couldn't contest the subpoena, why did he not comply with the subpoena And why did he only give a subset of the documents over? So it doesn't make sense no matter how you slice it. He's twisted himself up, this is Trump, into an area where there's like no possible defense. And even the MAGA commentator said the absolute slam dunk case out of all the cases is the Mar-a-Lago case, because it's so fucking overwhelmingly obvious this dude's fucking guilty of that shit. And it's like those flat earthers, right? Do you ever watch those flat earth debates where they can have their, they can have like individual explanations for certain phenomenon, and they can say, well, the refraction doesn't explain this, and so this is more explainable by a flat plane. But they can't have a model that works together where all the different observations match. And so, yeah, Trump can say mental declassification, but that provides other problems for him and difficulties for him. Trump can say.
Let me ask this. Perhaps maybe get us on a track that we can actually have some substantive disagreements here. In Audacity, in Palp, in your opinion, what is the strongest case of lawfare that was done against Trump? And to Pisco and Dev's side, what is the strongest piece of lawfare that you would point to that Trump is currently doing that you think is worthy of condemnation or examination? Let's have Palp's side go first, and we'll have Pisco's side go next.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go
Strongest one, your best one, your bomb. Okay.
So the whole case regarding his impropriety for loans and repayments and business statements and whatnot, that I think that would be the strongest case of lawfare, because there was a bunch of testimony in defense of Trump that everything was above board from his business partners, from the people he would go do business with. However, in terms of classifying it as lawfare, it's difficult because lawfare comes with the implicit intent of a political objective or some kind of vindictive goal. Whereas this could have just been something that was done in earnest by the prosecution leading that case to get Trump on something. Now that comes with all of the contention during Trump's first term, how much people hated the man, that motivation could have been spurred by him being a president, being an asshole, for them to be motivated to then bring up these cases. There's no guarantee that had he been president or not been president, this stuff ever would have come about, but that is crystal ball shit.
So to respond to that, you're talking about the Letitia James civil fraud case that was brought?
Yeah.
I'll just ask the question: Have you read Judge Goron's opinion on it, or the appellate division's opinion affirming the finding of civil fraud?
It's not. I'll just say no because I don't remember anything. It was all such in the time of reading it, right? I don't hold on to that information. I'm sorry.
That's like, have you ever read those opinions? I find it puzzling because, well, the appellate division one just came out, so. Okay, let's just put that aside. Like, I just find it like, if this were really a case of lawfare, I think that people on the MAGA side would take the time, right, to steep themselves, maybe, if there was a genuine good faith feeling of lawfare, steep themselves in the facts and legal theories, or at least some, because basically what you said is, well, there's some evidence that some of his business partners were ultimately fine with some of the loans that were provided. But that's not denied, and that doesn't make something lawfare. Just because there's some, testimony as to that the loans, they probably they're okay with the loans and it turned out okay, that doesn't mean that he didn't commit civil fraud. And New York,
I touched on that though. I said it would be difficult to classify it as lawfare because we can't establish that there was an actual political or objective.
But Wick asked you for the strongest case of lawfare, and what you said was a case where we can't establish it's lawfare. So if the strongest case of lawfare is one in which we can't establish it's lawfare, it seems like that's a little fucked in terms of where your position is in this debate.
You can't establish it. You can't wrap it in the verbatim definition of lawfare, but you can't also say that these people weren't motivated to go after Trump on whatever they could consider or whatever they could build as legitimate legal cases. They were better at it. They were better at bringing cases against Trump. We can only say as opinion it was lawfare. We can't actually contest any definitive definition that it was.
Okay, if you're acknowledging that you can't establish that this is lawfare under your vision of what lawfare is, and that's the strongest case of lawfare, then I think that you're acknowledging that we can't establish that there was lawfare against Trump. I think that that's a logical entailment of what you just said.
Let's give Palpy a chance. Do you have anything to add, or do you disagree with your comrade's example or anything like that? Go ahead.
Well, no, I don't necessarily disagree with his example. I have a different one, and I in my opinion, I think it's the Mar-a-Lago case. I think it's the classified documents case. I think it was a nothing burger of a case, and that it was the Biden DOJ kind of trying to just grasp at straws to get Trump. Like, I don't even think necessarily that the goal, because lawfare, I don't think necessarily has to end with someone in prison. I think lawfare is just using the law to disrupt things or anything like that. So I think the goal, whether Trump ended up in prison or not, or he just got a slap on the wrist kind of sentencing at the end of it, even though he came out of the other side of that practically unscathed. The point was always to disrail his presidential campaign and try to keep him off the ballot.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, here I have a question for you though, Palpatine. Okay, just real quick. Putting aside the legal stuff, just as normal people here, do you believe that Trump was guilty of any wrongdoing, even just morally, in the Mar-a-Lago case?
No.
Oh wow.
Why not?
No, well, because I think, because like I said earlier, I don't think he had any malicious intent. None of the documents that he had, that while they were classified, none of them were later on revealed to be like extremely classified, like stuff that would have gotten people killed or things like this. They were content to go after him, and they weren't like coming after him with like all guns blazing in the same way that they would if he was like hiding a dead body or something like that. It just seemed like a straw grasp to me. It seemed like like I said, a nothing burger of a case, which again, taking classified documents with you when you leave office is something that every president who before him and vice president, and not even then, classified documents in other positions in the federal government. People take that shit home all the time. This is the first time in my life I've never known anybody to get charged with a crime over it.
Okay, so if this is your position that Trump he didn't have any malicious intent, okay, and we're not talking legally here, we're talking just morally, as
morally, I don't think he had.
Okay,
I don't think he had anything wrong. No.
So when I asked you about those 4 cases, New York, Mar-a-Lago, Georgia phone call, D.C. election obstruction case, and you said all of them were lawfare, I think you said that. Do you have the same logic for all 4? Is that in each of these 4 cases, not necessarily for the legal standard, but just morally, that Trump he didn't have any malicious intent for any of them?
Well, I mean, no, I don't know. I'm not in the man's head. I don't know what his intent was. Do I think he had malicious intent in every single one of them? Probably not. No.
Why?
Well, I mean, what would have been the outcome for any of them? What malice would have required? If he was being malicious in any of these cases, what was the end goal that would have required him to be malicious? I
can tell you if you want.
Okay, go for it.
Sure. So in the D.C. election obstruction case, that case revolved around the 7 slates of false electors and the John Eastman scheme and presenting the electors as if they were real when they were not real. And Trump's motivation there would be to seize power in 2020.
Well, I mean, if the election was stolen from him, then what's the malice?
Oh, so that's it.
But
so
it wasn't stolen from him, though.
It was stolen from him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into this here because I don't think it's necessary. Because I don't want the whole was 2020 stolen or not. I just don't like it's a rabbit hole that we've already gone way off the prompt anyway. But no, yes. If you're asking me what do I think, I think 2020 was stolen. Yes.
So here's the thing, because it is kind of important, because your logic seems to be that Trump had no malicious intent in the DC obstruction case, specifically because the election was stolen from him, and therefore he was. No,
you're asking me morally, not legally. Morally.
Yes, morally. Yes, morally. He was morally justified to do this. Yes. Yes.
If he truly believed that he won that election and it was stolen from him, yes, I think he was morally justified to do everything in his power to try to
including doing a military coup. Wait. So would you have supported? No. I'm asking you. No, you just said anything. You would support anything. So if Trump had done a military coup to prevent Joe Biden from being authorized, you just said anything. You would support that, correct?
Considering that I do believe that the 2020 election was stolen from him, yeah. Yeah.
So you would have supported a military coup.
Because I do not believe that Joe Biden was genuinely elected president in 2020. I do not believe that.
Do you condemn Trump for not implementing the military to prevent Joe Biden from getting into office?
No, I condemn. No, I mean, he followed. I think he followed what he thought to be like the best, like his best course of action. Like obviously, it would have been it's like it is like, even let's go ahead and say, like, for the sake of argument, that 100% it was stolen. Everything you heard, Sharpie Gate, everything that happened in Georgia with the covering of the windows and just everything, every single crazy kooky, the Kraken, all of it was true. It's still a bad, like, kind of optical thing to use the military. And the one thing Trump wants more.
You said he should have done it, but you said he should have done it.
Hold on. Let me finish.
Yeah, let me finish. But just real quick, it's bad optics to use the military. Sorry, go.
Well, yeah, what I'm saying, I'm getting to that. So, like, what I'm saying is that, like, okay, the one thing that I think Trump wants more than anything, what he wants more than power, and I'm not saying the man isn't power hungry, because he does like power. He's been a New York real estate magnate his entire life. Like, he likes to be in charge. He likes power. But I think the one thing he wants more than power is to be loved. And so, like, he's kind of in a rock and a hard place of, like again, for the sake of argument,
you said he should have done. You just said. I just want to make sure you can back away from this opinion if you want. You just said he should have used.
I'm not backing away from it.
No, I'm telling you can if you want. You don't have to.
I don't want to.
So you think that Trump should have used the military to stay in power? I understand should to be what something someone ought do, right? Like, something you should do is something you ought do. So he didn't use the military. He ought to have, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've said that like three times, yes. Okay. I think that, look, I do believe that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump, and he should have used every available tool in order to get to the bottom of that theft. And if at the end of that it was revealed that, no, I actually did lose, then okay, fine. Then at that point, it's like, okay, fine, well, whatever, we lost, and it came out later, and, well, I'll eat the crow on that.
Including arresting senators and congressmen to prevent them from certifying Joe Biden, correct? You would support that?
That is, yeah, sure, why not? Because, like I said, I honestly believe that the 2020 election was stolen from him. I believe he won that night.
I understand. I've got two questions for you, okay?
I think a coup was committed against him, and it would have been acceptable for him to use the military to stop that coup.
Okay, I got two questions for you, okay? Firstly, you just said that you believe that Donald Trump wants to be loved above all else, right?
Yeah, I do think he wants to be loved more. Like, he wants power and love, but I think if you asked him, or if you could get inside his mind, which one does he like more? I think he likes love more than power.
Right, okay. When we were talking about the Mar-a-Lago case, you said that you can't get into Trump's head and divine his motivations. How are you doing it here?
No, I'm not divining his motivations. I'm just kind of speculating.
Okay, but still, you couldn't speculate before?
You're not being consistent.
No, I did speculate before. I was speculating that he wasn't being malicious in the Mar-a-Lago case. So I'm speculating as to.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think I'm being.
But so epistemically, you're on the same ground as all the Democrats who were reading the minds of Trump, right? Under your theory, right? In terms of what you know, you're saying he wasn't malicious. Them say he is malicious, but you're admitting that you're on equal grounds in terms of your epistemic justification.
In terms of our ability to speculate what goes on in the mind of a person when we don't have psychic powers, yes, we're
all on equal ground. But this is not how you act.
At straws in the dark.
But we get to mental motivations and states of mind through circumstantial evidence, and you would never take this ultimately agnostic view of people's intentions, right? Like, if someone goes to shoot you, you can infer that their intention is to shoot you. Now, it could be possible that there's an alien mothership that's controlling this person, but in the absence of such extraordinary evidence, we infer mental states by circumstantial evidence. So I just don't understand why you're giving ground and you're conceding that you're no more justified to believe that Trump was not malicious as Democrats are to concede that, or to say that Trump was malicious. Aren't you just saying that your explanation is no better than the Democrats?
Well, didn't I just say?
Yeah, you just said that. But why would you agree with one versus the other? You're basically saying the only reason I support Trump is because I like Trump.
I do like Trump.
Yeah.
That's not the only reason I support him. I agree with pretty much, not just a lot. I agree with pretty much every policy position he's ever put out.
So if you acknowledge both are equally justified, that is, the notion that Trump is malicious and that he's not malicious are equally justified, then why are you picking that Trump is not malicious over the Trump is malicious if they're equally justified?
I don't think that the two theories are necessarily equal. I think that what we're doing, as in just assessing the state of mind of a person with no evidence, is we're both grasping at straws in the dark.
So
Like, I
it,
don't
seems,
thi-
it
but-
seems
but
like
I-
it's substantially,
I don't
if that's your view of it, that we're all just largely grasping at straws, in what sense are Democrats more grasping at straws when they say that Trump is malicious versus when you say he's not? I mean, isn't it all, if it's all just clutching?
Because there's no, because like what other than the Comey thing so far in the 8-9 months 10 months he's been president now, he's been back in office, like what truly malicious thing has he done to attack
Well, you're just going to
anybody
say,
on the left?
well, I'm going to give examples, and I do have examples, so don't push me on it, because
Okay, go for it.
I will bring them. But you're just going to say, well,
I mean, I asked the question, I want the answer, so go for it.
I understand, but I just want to make sure, if I bring up an example, are you going to say, well, you're just trying to read his mind?
Well, no, fine. Just give me the examples. Like,
Yeah.
what's
so
what's
a
the
really
malicious
really
thing?
clear case is the Eric Adams. They dropped that prosecution. Mayor Adams, a corrupt Democratic politician, was taking bribes from the country of Turkey. He was doing so to steal funds, in addition to other corrupt purposes, to get like expensive, lavish gifts, and also to steal funds from New York City. This was a case brought by conservative prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. Trump cooks up a corrupt deal to drop that case in exchange for cooperation with ICE and Tom Homan. That is hugely corrupt, and it caused a judge basically to call out this corrupt quid pro quo, and you have Trump essentially defending a corrupt Democratic politician explicitly on Fox News for favors when it comes to ICE enforcement, things that don't have any rational connection to each other, right? Like what Mayor Adams' position is on ICE enforcement isn't related to whether he's guilty or not of taking bribes from the Turks. And notwithstanding that fact, Mayor Adams was let go. This corrupt mayor of the, arguably from the conservative lights, the most decadent city right in the country, the home of the blue machine and the Democrats. Trump let him go in a corrupt quid pro quo.
Okay, how does that? Where's the malice there? What's the malice?
The malice there is that Trump is undermining, thwarting the rule of law, subverting our process to go after bribery and public corruption, which Congress passed laws explicitly in favor of public corruption for his own political ends. That is to see his position, that is Trump's position, further solidified by promises of political cooperation with the new administration, and to have basically the obedience and having Mayor Adams at his beck and call. So that's the malicious state of mind, is that you are undermining the rule of law for a political favor. And if a Democrat did that shit, like imagine that, right? Imagine that there was like an indicted Republican governor or something, and Obama comes in and says, hey, as long as you convert to sanctuary city, we're going to drop the case. Would you say that's corrupt?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's what's going on here in reverse. And so that's
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I didn't read into what was going on in New York with Mayor Adams, because New York, because it was what goes on in like New York City. It's the biggest, most populous city in the country, but it's one city in a state that's I'm not the only state politics I care about are my state's politics, and then it's a
federal case.
It's stemming off of the question originally. Do you think there was any moral wrongness with Trump regarding 4 specific cases? And we're getting into the weeds on other stuff, and we're building this establishment on your personality, about your state of mind on anything. Would you be conflicted? Would you blah blah blah? And it's safe to attest that you did not think this far ahead on those things, and this consistency testing isn't really paying any.
Okay, but if you just want to go into
like I said, I didn't know much about the Adams case because
I'm enjoying this.
I didn't. No, well, I mean, I didn't.
You lit the fire.
I didn't read about the Adams case. I mean, you got me there. I did I read that Mayor Adams was facing some corruption charges, and I didn't read too much deeper into it.
So let's go to the allegations.
Democrat mayor in New York, corrupt.
We can move off.
Okay, that's all. I don't care about that.
Yeah, we can move off.
No,
So
I can't.
that's fine. That's fine. It's fine. So you brought up as the best example of lawfare against Trump was the classified documents case in Mar-a-Lago, and you guys got into a little bit of the weeds about did he do anything ethically wrong there? But let's just take a moment there and think about it. This is the case that every legal commentator, whether you're conservative, pro-MAGA, or whatever, says is the absolute strongest. Why is it the absolute strongest? Because the evidence of obstruction could not be better. You have breaches of the attorney-client confidentiality because of the crime fraud exception. multiple different instances of obstruction of the investigation, including going after moving the boxes. You have telephonic records to that effect. You have these communications between his subordinates saying we need to move these boxes before X time. You have the certification that they're complying with the subpoena when they know they're not, and when Trump must know he's not. So it's the strongest case. What is the evidence whatsoever that this is lawfare? Deleting the security footage, another one, yeah.
Because it doesn't, because there was not, I don't think Trump was doing anything morally incorrect.
So that's your definition for lawfare? So your definition of lawfare
my definition for lawfare is using the law in order to destroy your political opponents.
No.
Which was the end goal of the Mar-a-Lago case.
It was
not to slap down Trump. It was not to gain justice for some horrible wrongdoing, some crime he committed against the country. It was about destroying his political campaign.
You just said, so in response...
I got a question for you here. Here, Palpatine, just real quick, okay? So, let's assume for a minute that Trump was actually guilty in the Mar-a-Lago case, just for the sake of argument, okay? Mm-hmm. In that case, would it still be lawfare? Because not only, even though he's guilty, it also does disrupt his political career.
Guilty of
the crime of what they're indicting. So he's asking you, assume that Trump is guilty. Would it still be lawfare to go after him?
No, we're assuming that, because like I said, if he, I will concede that if he did violate the law, I don't think he did so knowingly and maliciously. I mean, I understand that,
okay,
after
but
the subpoena thing, whatever.
To the question though, what they're trying to get at is, even if a politician, a high-level politician of the enemy team does something wrong, do you think it is lawfare to go after actual crimes by high-level? Like if Chuck Schumer did something, broke the law, right? And Trump prosecuted him, would that be lawfare in your mind?
No, if just keep it simple, if Trump murdered a guy today, or if Trump murdered a guy in 2021 and got busted in 2022 and was in prison by 2024, no, that's not lawfare.
But Dev is not talking about murder. He's talking about the classified documents and national
offensive. I've already said I don't think he broke any laws.
So no, but the question is,
assume he did.
Assume he did. If it's a conditional, it's a conditional statement. If he broke the law, would it be lawfare?
No, probably not.
Okay, so the reason why people don't think it's lawfare is because the evidence of his guilt is overwhelming in that case. Overwhelming. He absolutely knew he had those documents. He was ordering his minions to move them around so that the FBI would not get them and he wouldn't comply with the subpoena. He knew he wasn't authorized because he had the subpoena, because he said he wasn't allowed to have those documents. And he knew that his conspirators were deleting footage. They were talking amongst themselves about what the boss wants. That is, the boss wanted those documents to be saved, even though he had no legal right to have them. And every legal commentator, including MAGA people, said this was his weakest case.
He only had a legal right. He stopped having a legal right to have those documents after he was subpoenaed to give them up. When he took them, he was legally allowed to have them.
No, he wasn't. It's just about whether he was willful when he took them.
Every single time classified documents were taken by a former president, they broke the law, right?
Yeah.
That is yes, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they're guilty of a crime. You understand the difference?
Honestly, no.
Okay, so
I don't materially think that there is a difference.
I'll tell you why. So there is a difference. Breaking the law doesn't mean committing a crime. A crime is defined oftentimes, usually, almost exclusively by statute, and it has specific criminal elements. But not everything that is illegal is a violation of a crime. Do you agree or do you disagree?
No. Walk me through that again.
Okay, so let me give you an example.
I got a little lost there on the way.
So it could be illegal for Trump to take out those documents and bring them to Mar-a-Lago and to retain them there after he's president, to retain the documents. I think when he brings them during his presidency, he's probably authorized to do that. I would agree with you there. But to retain them after he is the president, almost certainly illegal. But that doesn't mean it's a crime. Because in order for it to be a crime, it needs to meet some criminal elements. And I would agree, probably, at that point, you wouldn't have enough for willfulness. So that's why the evidence of his obstruction is so damaging for Trump, is because after there's a subpoena, there's a lot of evidence of willfulness there. And so just because it's illegal for him to retain the documents, and just because it was illegal for Hillary Clinton to have classified documents on a private server outside the State Department, doesn't mean that she committed a crime.
See, and this is the problem that I have. It's rules for thee and not for me. It's okay when my guys do it, but when Trump does it, it's bad.
No. You're not understanding me. Do you acknowledge?
No, I do understand.
No, you don't. You don't understand what I just said. No, what I just said
I do
was.
understand what you're just saying.
No.
I'm saying I don't agree.
Okay, so you think every breaking the law is always a crime? Is that what your position is? That breaking the law is always a crime?
My position is.
Just answer the question, and you can explain. Is it your position, yes or no, or I don't know, that breaking the law is always a crime?
No, not always, because
Okay.
sometimes you break the law by mistake. Sometimes you trespass. You trespass on private property when you're hiking and you didn't know.
Yeah, sometimes, for example,
you know.
defamation is not always a crime. Like defamation is not protected speech, but oftentimes it's like a civil suit for defamation, and you're breaking the law by defaming someone's character, but it's not a crime. So the notion of criminality isn't coextensive with breaking the law. And so I acknowledge that it was certainly against the law for Joe Biden to retain those diaries of his, but it didn't mean that he committed a crime when he did it.
Well, to get down to the brass tacks of the thing is so if we're all agreeing that keeping classified documents after leaving office is a crime, but the difference here is that Trump did it knowingly, right?
No. We're not agreeing on that. We're not agreeing on this.
No, but except you did. A second ago,
No,
I asked
I didn't.
you.
I'm trying to be very specific.
Hold on. No, hold on. I asked you a minute ago. I said every time a former president leaves office, takes classified documents with him, that's against the law. You said yes.
No, sorry, I said against the law. I didn't say a crime. You just said a crime. I'm being careful with my language.
Sorry,
You're not.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I am using crime and against the law interchangeably. So
Correct.
let me try to clean it up a little bit. I don't think. Okay, the reason why I think it's lawfare, just to get back to the core of the question
you want to be done with that? So we just did an entire thing. You just want to move off it before we've resolved it. So
well, no, I'm still on the same topic. I'm trying to reorganize my thoughts by trying to get back to the brass tacks, and then we can explain.
It sounds like you're dodging this line of inquiry because
I'm not trying to dodge this line of inquiry.
Just to interject, it feels like a considerable amount of charities being given to the Democrat side on this. I mean, it's you're trying to establish essentially a mens rea on this, right? You're trying to say that there are circumstances involved when it comes to charging someone with a crime or stating that a crime was committed, that it's not actually a criminal activity. You can walk out of the store with a candy bar in your pocket, forgetting that you put it there, but it can't be established that you did it purposefully if you are earnestly making the point you didn't steal it.
There's something sorry to address you. Yeah, I think that one of the problems in trying to make a symmetry between the Biden case and the Trump case is differences in mental state, specifically willfulness.
Yeah, and you would base a lot of that off of the Her report,
which you guys haven't read. Yes, because that's the basis of facts for the Biden investigation. So
I've got it pulled up. I'm going to read it when we're done here.
Okay, but like the thing is, how do you even begin to try to draw a disanalogy or try to say that there's a similarity or a symmetry when you haven't read it, right? Like, how could you possibly say that you know enough to say these cases are materially similar if you haven't read the source documents? You get me?
I mean, the greatest...
No, can you address what I just said?
Yeah, but I'm going to say what I want to say. The greatest point in that Her report, the greatest report in those reports about Biden, what is protecting him from having the mental state of it was that he was not mentally capable.
That's not true.
Of understanding.
So look at what you just did, right? This is insanity.
So
wait. Let me just carry. So you just wait. I just want to be very clear about what you just did. It is so insane what you just did. It is one of the craziest things we've ever said. You just said that you haven't read the Her report, and you just tried to say what the most important piece of evidence in the Her report was. So you're trying to characterize the Her report, even though you just admitted you haven't read it. So how could you possibly come to the conclusion that Biden's mental state was the strongest piece of evidence in the Her report against charging him when you haven't read it?
I don't believe I'm the one that ever said I didn't read it. I've said I haven't read other things, or I've had read other things and didn't remember them. I do remember elements of the Her report. I do remember that. Yeah, and I had to. I read it. I read specific sections of what was referenced in breakdowns from possibly even
tweets
going into it, and from the actual
report in other documents. And
there was that whole time frame where they were reading, where there was an actual oral testimony of the Her report, and certain things were being called out, and I had to go read it for myself. I was like, what did he actually write down?
This is you, by the way. You're like, yeah, I definitely read the Her report and reports.
I didn't read the Her report. I just read news about the case.
Dude, come on, you didn't read this shit. And if you read it,
No,
you didn't
not the whole
understand it.
thing.
And if you read it, you didn't understand it.
Okay.
So he literally said I didn't read the Her report. I read reports on the Her report. That's
Okay,
what he
No,
so
said.
I didn't read reports on the Her report. I went to
Okay,
specific
my bad. Sorry, I
sections that were
misunderstood you then. My bad.
called
I
out.
apologize.
Certain things that were being said. The reason I remember the mental state comment is because that jumped out. That was like, what exactly is the surrounding wording on that?
So
I only
given that
remember that
given that you
part
read the Her
specifically,
reports,
though.
do you recall what the classified documents at issue were?
No.
I mean, isn't that
I know where they were stored.
That's
I know
all over
that's-
the Her report. How could you have read it and not taken away the bare topics of these documents? That's just a test to see if you read it.
Because it's not something I'm going to hold on to as time goes on. And I'm sorry.
Hold on. I still one more question for Pisco's and Dev's side before we get to closings. It's been a rough one, gang. In your opinion, what is the strongest case of lawfare that Trump is currently, or maybe in the past, performed that you find the most egregious, the one we should be most up in arms about, the one that is most damaging to Trump or to Trump's being seen as someone who doesn't engage in lawfare? Go ahead.
I would say the before this, it was, in my opinion, probably the Mayor Adams deal. But this one takes the cake. I think the Comey indictment, this is an act of pure presidential discretion. The White House
so
interfering in the
Comey
DOJ.
one
Yeah, this is
is
the worst one
the
because it's
smoking gun.
it's so lacking of facts and law, and it's a direct order from the president in public, and it's directing the DOJ for political reasons, explicitly stated political reasons related to revenge. And so, in that sense, it is the worst act of lawfare by Trump.
What about you, Dev? Same answer or different?
I don't know if I'd put this one as the worst. It's pretty high up there. I think it might be, but I also think I might give it to the series of cases back in March, where he was going after all the various lawyers who had contributed to the cases against him during the Biden presidency. That's pretty fucking bad.
The reason I put so two things there. So because I think and I view the norms related to the Department of Justice in a more salient fashion than some of the other norms related to other agencies. And although to be honest, the law firm thing deals with the First Amendment, which I hold to a high esteem. So honestly, there's a good case for that from Dev. Maybe it's a recency bias. I think another argument is from the first term, the lawsuits to try to steal the election, are arguably some of the worst instances of lawfare, what I take to be lawfare, which is to subvert the Constitution or to subvert the rule of law or to file lawsuits in bad faith for a political motive. But in general, vis-a-vis the DOJ, I would say this one with Comey is the worst. But I do think that these First Amendment cases in March and later on are also really, really bad.
Do you do either? We've been over the Comey thing, but do either Palpy or Audacity? Do you have any counters to the other examples that were brought up by Pisco and Dev just there? Whether it be the law, the cases against the law firms that prosecuted Trump or Trump-related issues, or the lawsuits regarding the election in 2020. Any counters to any of those? Anything?
I mean, not really. It is lawfare, and as I stated before, I'm not excited about lawfare being on the table. I'm also not shocked that it's happening, and I'm also indifferent to it happening, and it's going to happen for the next 3 years. It's going to be the case going forward that this is the game we're playing now for a considerable amount of time into the future. And if you don't win in the midterms, and if you don't win in 2028, whoever the kingmaker chooses for the next round is going to continue this behavior. And I just find I find it hard to be empathetic to any of this, because it's like, well, what the fuck did you expect? You poked the bear, it woke up, it started eating your face.
Now, I agree that the things back in March going after the lawyers that went after him, that's lawfare. I agree with him. I'm indifferent to it. I don't think the 2020 lawsuits to try to overturn the election were lawfare, because I believe the election was stolen. So
wait, just real quick, did you read any of them? Because I read 62 of them.
I read them at the time. This was 3-4 years ago. I don't
All
remember
62?
the details. No, not all 62. I just said some. I said I read some.
All right, got yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
And I mean, I read a little bit about them. Like I said, this was years and years. This was at the time it was happening. This was years ago. It's been a wild fucking ride. I think we can all agree with that. Like, whether you're for it, against it, happy, sad, it's been a wild ride. A lot of shit has happened. The last 4 years has felt like a decade. I forgot a lot of stuff.
Yeah, just for my own edification, are you or do you subscribe to any QAnon stuff? Would you
No.
consider yourself QAnon?
No, I'm not a QAnon person. I make fun of QAnon people a lot. I just agree with them. We happen to agree on this one thing, that 2020 was stolen, but I'm not a Q person. No.
Yes, curious. Okay, I'm gonna read.
I do want to hop in here real quick.
Well, like, I don't believe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, no, I don't believe that. Like, trust the plan that there was a secret, conspiracy between the Trumps and the Kennedys that goes back 30 years, and that this is all part of a plan and secret satanic, energy sucking vampires in the high. No, I don't believe any of that shit.
Good, our secret's safe. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just want to point out, right? The actual point of this debate was about the Comey indictment and whether it was lawfare or justice. And I know, so Audacity, I think you had a critique that we got derailed for most of it, and fair enough, right? But the reason we got derailed is because ultimately you guys admitted that it was lawfare and you were indifferent to it. And you were indifferent to it because both of you seem to believe that the Democrats committed lawfare first. However, we just now talked about Democratic lawfare for like an hour and a half, and we brought up a whole bunch of evidence on the other side of that position. Is there any equivalent evidence that you guys can bring up on the other side of the Comey position? Because we have a ton of it to show that it wasn't actually lawfare.
My, because I started this off wrong, my evidence has been dismissed by Judge Pisco. I'm not allowed to claim the public testimony and all of the conflicting statements that were used to bring the indictment
not if you can't
forward
point to them. Not if you can't point to them, right? Like, you're just saying, oh, conflicting statements, this or that. But what conflicting statement? Have you thought about that? Like, what statement are you saying is conflicting? I'm totally saying the record is. I'm asking you for the evidence. You said there's no good evidence available, and then maybe they have some that was given to the grand jury, but you haven't pointed to a conflicting statement.
Sorry if I'm not terribly specific on this, but you have all of the testimony Comey's providing in front of Congress stating that he either did not authorize or was unaware of any authorization of information during probes or so on and so forth being leaked to the press.
Yeah,
so time goes on. Eventually, you get an original statement from McCabe saying, I'm not aware, so on and so forth, and also that I didn't need Comey's authorization to get this information to media. We have DOJ policy in place that allows us to make connections or allows us to provide information to media. You then
McCabe says he did leak.
Right, McCabe says he leaked. That's one thing, and there was a whole IG situation with him and a report that came out against McCabe. But you fast forward to current events, and you have McCabe but giving a media interview where he's said he was talking, like Comey was aware, essentially. It was a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like, I didn't need his authorization, but he was aware that I was doing it.
No. McCabe says that he told Comey on the 31st of October. The article was published on October 30th. So at no point did McCabe allege that Comey gave authorization. That's why McCabe says he wouldn't have sought authorization from Comey because he doesn't need to. Because he didn't. There's no evidence he did.
Right. And the whole thing, all the congressional hearings, all the testimony, all of Comey's arguments, the things he was asked was, did you authorize or were you aware of authorization or aware of intents to leak information to the media?
Yeah, and I'm asking for you I'm asking you what the evidence is. Because you were asked the question, basically, we're providing all this evidence to substantiate and to justify the cases against Trump. Do you have anything similar? That was what Dev asked you on the Comey case. And you're like, well, we have all this like evidence, bro. But I'm like, what evidence? Yes, I know what Comey said. I know what McCabe said. They're not in conflict, at least with respect to the claim at issue here. And I'm not aware of the other inconsistencies that you're pointing to. So what actually is the evidence of the crime here?
if I could get a minute to look it up, I can tell you.
No. As you sit here, are you aware of it?
Yeah, I am aware of it.
Okay.
I am aware of it that he was in a media interview where he alluded to Comey being aware of his or others' attempts to get information out
After on October 31st, but that's not authorization. That's knowing about it after.
I'm gonna read these super chats while he looks up the specifics. Give him a moment to do that. Once he does that, and we'll finish this up, we'll go into closings and we'll close it out. $10 from the pleb. I take back my good faith question to Palp earlier. Clearly, his name gives away his opinion that he is in favor of an evil authoritarian dictator, usurping democracy and turning the U.S. into the empire. Thank you for the $10.
No, but okay.
Okay.
I'm just not even going to refute that. Okay, I'll just let that one slide.
Okay. $20 from Zonia. Dev wants us to super chat about communist subversion so that he can bonk Pisco about it. Do you want to bonk Pisco about it?
What about communist subversion?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, well, thank you for the $20. $5 from Jamie Rogers. As per usual, the Trump supporters cite vibes and assumptions while sneering at the suggestion that they actually fact-check themselves. Shocker. Thank you for the $5. Okay, with that, Audacity, did you find what you needed to find?
Yeah, it's a blurb from The Hill. Cruz's question was an attempt to highlight conflicting accounts from Comey and his former deputy McCabe about a leak to the Wall Street Journal about the Clinton investigation days before the 2016 election. Clinton ended up losing that election to Trump. I don't know why it's included. Comey has said he was unaware of the leak, but McCabe has indicated Comey knew about and authorized the leak. Comey has also said McCabe implied in a conversation with him after the Journal's report that he also wasn't aware of the leak.
Yeah, so
part of the questioning, part of the reasoning is not only authorization, Comey's authorization, but awareness of authorizations as well.
Yeah, so it's so funny you bring up Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is the question given in 2020 where James Comey is standing by his previous testimony. They didn't authorize an anonymous leak on the Clinton Foundation thing. But what you'll find there is, if you actually read the Inspector General report, that that McCabe never alleged that he sought authorization from Comey. And so it's just like Ted Cruz is perhaps fishing. But even Ted Cruz separately sent a letter to the DOJ saying that we don't know to what extent Comey authorized the leak or to what extent, it's conflicting with McCabe's testimony or whatever. There is a conflict on what happened afterwards in terms of Comey saying that McCabe didn't suggest that the leak came from him, and McCabe said that he did admit that it came from him. So that's where there is actually a genuine conflict in what they said after the fact, but it doesn't have to do with prior authorization. And Ted Cruz himself, it's so funny you bring up Ted Cruz, he was the one who in his letter, I think my most recent short shows this, that in his letter he said, we do not know if Comey gave authorization. So even if you take Ted Cruz, a partisan MAGA Republican who is obviously, has a history of mischaracterizing his testimony, at his word, his letter to the DOJ indicates that they're actually not aware that Comey authorized this leak to the Wall Street Journal. And the reason is because it's been investigated and he didn't authorize it. And the IG found that, and the previous Trump administration found that. And guess what? The reason they charged McCabe, right? The previous Trump administration charged McCabe. Why? Because their theory was that McCabe was lying. So it's the height of irony to come back afterwards and in a conflict between a he said, she said, which isn't even in conflict with each other on the relevant portion, that in that conflict, Trump takes the side of McCabe in the first term and then takes the side, Comey in the first term and takes the side of McCabe in the second term. So it's all bullshit. And even Ted Cruz's own statements show the emptiness of this charge.
All right. We can go off about that later or whatever, but I have no clue where this show's going to.
Ending the show, so
yeah, I was about to say. I mean, I don't know if he wants to continue to talk. I have no idea.
I mean, what's the point? You haven't read any of this shit. I mean, I'm sorry to be mean, but like, you came on a stream. Yeah. You don't know shit about this indictment, dude. You don't know anything about it. You haven't read the IG report about the McCabe matter. You don't really know who Dan Richman is. You don't know any of the theories behind it. And so, like, I'm not like trying to be mean, but you shouldn't be on here. And the other guy, this like dickhead who wants to do a military coup, he shouldn't be on here either. But the fact that we're even humoring your opinions that are based on nothing. You're making the comparison to the Her report, trying to characterize the Her report. You haven't read it. Isn't this embarrassing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. No, I'm not embarrassed at all. I had a great time.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Great. Wonderful. We're going to go into closing statements. Dev, I want to talk to you about the Adam and Stitch thing after this, if you have some time.
Do you?
I
That was
do.
a fun fucking time, wasn't it?
I do. I have some thoughts, but I want to get through
Sure,
this
sure,
segment
sure,
before
sure.
we transition to that, and they can leave if they want or stay if they want. It's up to them. We're gonna start with Audacity closing statements, and we're gonna end with Palpatine, and we'll just go around. Go ahead, Audacity. Give us your thoughts.
Again, I'm just going to end it with lawfare is bad. We shouldn't be doing it. We can always go chasing the original sin of who started it. Someone could always build a strong justification. Someone obviously, to Pisco's point, more informed than me on this topic. You're absolutely right about that. I did come into this looking to have a conversation. Didn't go as planned. Shit happens. I'm sorry for wasting your time. But I am just indifferent because this is the current political climate we're in. This is going to be how things operate for the foreseeable future, and we are going to have to, honestly, unless another regime gets in and actually makes the changes and actually puts forward the legislation and the order, this is not how we're going to do this anymore. These cards are always going to be on the table, and it's always going to be how things are going to get played.
Okay. Thank you for being here. I do appreciate you coming on. Yeah. Thanks. I've linked to all these guys in my YouTube description, by the way. They have taken time out of their day to give us content, so please give them a follow. Dev, go ahead.
Okay, so it's very easy for Republicans to say that Democrats do it and Republicans don't. It's very easy for Democrats to say that Republicans do it, Democrats, and then they don't. Both sides can claim that any evidence to the contrary has been manufactured by their opponents, that motivations cannot be known, and you're just mind reading the worst possibility of all possibilities. But it's actually not just postmodern anti-truth bullshit all the way down. There is an objective reality here. There is a truth value that we can unearth. And the honest truth is, guys, I'm sorry, but like the Democrats engage in orders of magnitude less lawfare than the Republicans right now. And that can be borne out just through honest inquiry and investigation. And I will self-shill right now. If you have a spare 4 hours and you're a Trump supporter, go watch my January 6th video. It's 4 hours because I put in every single piece of evidence, every single drop. I talked to all my right-wing friends. I gathered up a whole bunch of questions that they had, like good faith questions about the election, and I answered each and every single one of them with evidence. So if you're open-minded, if you're honest, go give me a click. I would appreciate it. And you know what? After you watch that 4 hours, I guarantee you will have at least a few more questions of your own.
Thanks for coming in. Check out that video, gang. Take a little bit of time out of your weekend or something. Go watch that. Pisco, please.
Yeah, this debate was sad, man. I mean, it kind of ended in the first minutes where there was one of our interlocutors who said, basically, I'm not here to defend the Comey indictment, and I'm just going to trust potentially that it's possible, I suppose, that there's some secret evidence that none of us are aware of, and then eventually admitted that I'm indifferent now as to whether or not there are political prosecutions going on. Imagine saying that of your country, that you don't care whether or not lawfare persists by your side. That's essentially admitting the worst kinds of accusations that were made of the left and the Democrats is you don't care about it when it's on your side. And you're just accepting that wholesale. Yes, I don't mind political prosecutions. I mean, he goes a step further saying, even if it's the case that my preferred candidate loses in every single election contest in court and before the various state legislatures and before Congress, ultimately, I would be okay with a military-style coup to promote a theory that was never substantiated in all these different forums where there was plenty of time and space to air out those forums on the fact and the law. And it ultimately grounds out into, like, you just don't believe in these principles. You don't hold the principle of no lawfare, no political prosecutions. On the facts of each one of these cases, we can explain very clearly why the prosecutions against Trump are based in fact and law and why there's justification to go down those. You haven't even read the primary sources or the main reports or the relevant investigatory documents of those cases. Haven't read the Her report. Haven't read Ngoran's opinion with respect to the Letitia James decision. Haven't read any of the relevant fact patterns related to the Comey matter. And so why should we take you seriously if you're trying to make these false equivalences between different cases and you haven't read it? And at worst, like trying to characterize the Her report and what the main piece of evidence was in the Her report and flip-flopping on whether you read it or whether you read reports of the report or read discussions of the report. This is all so embarrassing, guys. And it's embarrassing for the country that we have to stomach this level of interrogation into things that should be of the utmost importance. The independence of the judiciary, the independence of the Department of Justice, these should be of the utmost importance. Political corruption, yes, on your own side matters. That's why I know your talking points from your side more than you do, because I actually care about it. So when someone makes an accusation, for example, that Biden was corrupt with respect to these political prosecutions against Trump, and that's their argument, I know the talking points there. I knew the quote from Alvin Bragg. Why do I know the quote from Alvin Bragg? Because when someone made that accusation, I followed up on it. Even though it's your talking point, half the time I'm the one bringing it up because I've actually done the research into this. And I would encourage you and your audiences to do this bare minimum, the scant amount of research into the claims, into the relevant prosecutions, because when you do, you'll notice there is a humongous asymmetry. It is an untenable asymmetry, but that asymmetry exists purely and exclusively with the MAGA corrupt officials currently in charge of the executive branch. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being here, and check them out, gang. Palpy, you are last up. Close us out.
I'm retarded. If you'd ever, like, I know none of you guys have ever heard of me, so I'm sure you never watch my show, and that's fine. Like, you know, but check it out, because it's most, like, all I do is I read the news and I opine. And a running joke with me and my co-host since we started the podcast back in 2021 is don't come to us for advice or like these like hardcore super deep dive political takes, because we're just two intoxicated retards. That's what we are. But I was given a prompt. I tried my best a day and a half before this was supposed to start. I did my best to prepare for that prompt. And then we went off into the weeds on everything else tangential to the prompt. And I was frankly unprepared for a lot of it. And I hope my retardation was at least entertaining and you got something out of it. And I'll close with this. Everything that guy just said is bullshit. And with that, I yield the balance of my time.
Okay, wonderful. Dev, do you wanna talk about the Adam Sitch stuff? I'm gonna let these other guys go.
Hey,
We can if you want, sure.
I do.
It was a fun night.
thanks, guys. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks. See you later, buddy.
Holy shit. I don't think I have... That is maybe the most one-sided discussion that I have ever participated in. It was like... I felt bad. But I couldn't let my foot off the gas because of how much this matters to me. But like, Jesus Christ. I think it's telling that the conservative to typical people that they have on don't want to come into the discussion because it's just you can't defend it. It's indefensible. There's no tenable defense of it. But like, God damn, I'm going to make it a priority to clip up that discussion, to push that to the start of the feed, because that is the character of the opposition. When you ground it out, they haven't done the reading. They don't know. And they rely usually on people's ignorance of a factoid here or there. But when you actually know all of their talking points better than they do, it is just a raffle stomp every single time. And this was just like, I think they said all the memes. I'm tired. I'm retarded. I wasn't prepared. I concede. All the work and words of defeated opponents. I mean, it's just absolutely disastrous performance. I don't know what to say. That one guy straight up like acknowledged that he couldn't prove any lawfare against Trump. The entailment of his position was you can't even prove the strongest alleged case of lawfare against Trump. And if that's true, I think you're committed to the position that you can't prove any case against Trump of lawfare. To the negative detriment of Trump is what I mean. And that other guy just totally mask off. Yeah, I would support a military coup. Okay. The best thing you can do is just keep him talking. That's the best thing you can do. It's like self-discrediting.